boy from Mississippi. Yeah, I could buy a Maybach, but I'm still in my F-150. And my last name is a whole lot bigger than I thought it'd be. A lot of things changed, except one thing, me. I'm still the same old redneck fuck, don't give a damn, ain't afraid to throw a dead buck on my Instagram, grain alcohol in my cup, got the whole house wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Yeah, middle finger to the sky, buddy, that's right. I don't sprinkle Dixie Crystal on my halftime. Keep your in crowd, I'll be the outcast. I'll be country till I'm dead, that's my last name is a whole lot bigger than I thought it'd be. A lot of things change, but if there's something you should know about me, I'm still the same old redneck fuck, don't give a damn, ain't afraid to throw a dead buck on my Instagram, grain alcohol in my cup, got the whole house wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Yeah, wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Middle finger to the sky till I'm gonna die. 44 in the park for the copperheads. Alcohol in my cup, got the whole house wall to wall, and I still ain't sold out. Middle finger to the sky till I'm gonna die. 44 in the park for the copperheads. Alcohol in my cup, got the whole house wall to wall.
All right, y'all. I am back. So, what's going on, y'all? Hello. Hey, Real Rig and Lauren's only working long. Yes. For sure. I'll get a hold of you tomorrow. Lauren's only working long. Yes. Yes, for sure. And thanks for stopping by today. Like I said, I'm gonna try something different other than Lauren. Um, so I'm wanting to do like some stuff that I'm very well interested in. So like all this like creepy, dark-sided, the show the craziness of majestic Falkor. Uh, yeah. So I just want to bring my craziness to you guys and to show off my dark, sinister side. God damn, that's cringe. Hey, MC Sleeves, nice for you to stop by. So what we have in store today is um, let's see, I got a couple some more animal attack. Not as many animal attack stories today, but I kind of actually. Actually, I just realized, yeah. But I definitely want to get into some of these other ones before we get into the animal ones. I kind of want to start off with like I have mostly like a lot of serial killer run-ins or like stories, and then um I have some animal attack stories for later. And then I also have one UFO. Um Actually, speaking of which, I might start off with that. Actually, it's from Mr. Ballin. It's top 3 signs of alien life. So we will get it started. And I like how I'm doing like I have like the Lauren sleeves. Like the Lauren I still have the Lauren theme going on. So if I might for a palate cleanser, I might jump over and do like a Lauren call or something. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of want to keep it going with like what I'm doing right now, so like some of this stuff. So we're gonna kick it off with top 3 signs of UFO. Top 3 signs of alien life is what we're gonna kick it off with. From Mr. Ballin, real American hero. I'm really into the aliens thing too. Like, I know for sure there's like other life out in space. At some like we just haven't discovered it yet, but there's definitely other life out there.
Pentagon just quietly confirmed the 2 leaked videos from 2017 that showed these strange objects whipping around our atmosphere are totally authentic, and to this day they have no idea what they are. Before I get into today's list, if you're a fan of the strange, dark,
So we're gonna kick off with the wow signal. There we go.
late one night in the summer
Hope you guys enjoy these too, because I very much enjoy these like these types of videos and like stories and stuff.
summer of 1977, a large radio telescope in Ohio intercepted a very unique signal. The telescope was searching the sky on behalf of an organization called SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and the signal, although it only lasted 72 seconds, fit the profile of a message beamed to us from another world. Jerry Amen, who was a project scientist,
I am not familiar with the Fermi paradox, and I'm sure it will. I'll fucking love it.
for SETI, was flipping through some of the computer printouts generated by the telescope when he
What exactly is that? Interest me, sir.
noticed a series of letters. Now, the way this particular radio telescope worked is it pretty much constantly picked up a signal, but that signal was a very low background hum of static, and that was represented in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those low numbers are representative of that basic
Castro. I just realized what you said, Castro.
background sound that they just write off. It doesn't matter. Occasionally, the telescope would pick up a higher number on the readout, like a 7, an 8, a 9, and even above that, it transitions to letters to represent louder radio signals. But all of those higher signals had a rational explanation. Either they were anomalous or they were tied to something very natural and ordinary. But that particular night in 1977, as the telescope swept across the sky, it picked up a signal that was so strong it surged past 0 through 9 and made its way into the letters all the way up to letter U, and it held it for 72 seconds, representing a signal that was 30
I said wow, and
times stronger than what this telescope normally picks up as its baseline. And after those 72 seconds, the telescope eventually passed it, and that signal dropped all the way back down. So when Eamon saw this amazing string of letters representing this radio signal, he circled it in red ink and wrote next to it, "Wow!" exclamation point. And from that point forward, this transmission became the WOW signal. One of the main reasons the WOW signal was not immediately cast out as some anomaly or chalked up to some other natural occurrence is because of what we understand about radio wave transmission. The goal of this radio telescope was to try to pick up radio signals coming in from other worlds. And so the way they did that is they opened up a whole bunch of different channels, receivers, they had 50 of them, and anytime they were aiming their dish in a direction of the sky, if there was any radio waves coming towards them,
holy shit, Ilrig, you have fucking have me something to watch later tonight when I go to bed.
they tried to capture them on different radio frequencies. If you were aiming your antenna in a direction where natural radio waves were coming towards you, it would hit one channel and then diffuse over adjacent channels because it's not a targeted radio wave. It's natural. It's more like a shotgun blast. Non-natural radio waves, like the ones we're familiar with when we listen to the radio, listen to music, those are targeted radio waves, meaning when they were sent out in a very narrow band. They were sent out on a single frequency. And
Holy shit! Wow. Lauren's only working long. That will be like a huge stream. Jesus, man, dude, man, that would be fucking awesome to do. Fuck. I don't know when, but yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, I'll definitely get a hold of you, and then, bro, that'll be a fun one. I can already tell that'll be a good stream. More like a podcast is what it'll be. Is more than likely what it'll turn up into being is a podcast, basically.
And only people that have turned to that particular frequency
Yeah, that'd be fucking awesome.
or that particular receiver are going to hear your message. That is a non-natural radio wave. The night that the WOW signal was picked up, it was only picked up on one channel. It did not diffuse over the others, meaning the WOW signal is not natural and was created by someone or something. And for the SETI researchers that are literally combing the sky for signs of extraterrestrial life, this is exactly what they were looking for. It is what an intelligent life form would do to try to communicate. They would use one radio frequency to demonstrate this is intentional. But despite decades of professional and amateur astronomers searching the sky for this WOW signal, it's never been found again. While there's many theories about what could have caused the WOW signal,
that just proves how it's real, because it's not found again.
Decades of professional and
Because if it was natural, it would still be there.
amateur astronomers searching the sky.
Well, not really still be there, but you would be able to somehow probably end up at some point picking it up again. But yeah, just to show you on how intelligent it is that they haven't been able to pick it up again. It was probably that once in a lifetime thing, like 1 in a million chance, and we finally hit one, and then yeah, now we're here. Still not knowing.
Sky for this WOW signal. It's never been.
I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't mean that that's the exact definition of like alien life, but I mean, still, you would think like if it's a natural occurrence or something like that, you would be able to find it and shit.
Found again. While there's many theories about what could have caused the WOW signal, obviously ranging from extraterrestrial life to a comet that passed by in 1977 that we only recently knew about, to a secret spy satellite, the bottom line is, to this day, we cannot add.
Hey, Ellie, Elias. Oh, wow. Jesus Christ, majestic. Ugh. I'm just going to say Ellie. Sorry I don't even know what I was trying to say after that. I had a Lauren moment right there. And I haven't even been drinking. Or anything, really, for that matter. I don't even know where that came from, but thanks for stopping by. Oh. Hey, Byless99, welcome. We're doing top 3 signs of alien life right now. And it's kind of a different stream today. Like I'm just doing stuff that's non-Lauren material and doing stuff that I'm very much interested in.
Adequately explain it. It remains the best evidence of alien communication ever obtained.
Yes, I definitely will, Eel.
There is a taboo that is held in the scientific and academic communities, as well as in government, news media,
Wonder if this is the Tic Tac.
and all modern institutions. And that taboo is on taking UFOs seriously. As a result of this societal conditioning, many people simply don't.
I just thought I would do this UFO one because we were, like, what was it? Like the beginning of this month, like ever since like the Chinese balloon got shot down. All of a sudden, we were seeing hearing about three unidentified crafts that were shot down. So I thought we would and that's the funny thing too. That kind of has me going too. Like my conspiracy thing going on too is ever since those have been shot down. Um, how come I'm how come we haven't really heard much about it? So it kind of has me going. I wonder if it actually. I don't know. Then again, I was fucking bro. I haven't really seen much after or heard anything really after.
Believe in UFOs. And those same people will view others that do believe in
Hey, Mandy, that's nice for you to stop by.
UFOs or who are open-minded to it as the crazy people, when in reality, UFOs are blatantly real. I mean, blatantly so. And they've been whipping around Earth for some time. But because of that taboo, scientists and politicians, they don't want to do the research to figure out why they're here because it's career suicide. And what's worse is there's all sorts of programs, like I'm going to tell you about in a minute, that are designed to keep people conditioned to believe that everything is ponies and rainbows, and there's no aliens, there's no UFOs, there's no anything but Earth. In 1950...
Yeah, the people that say that there's really no life outside, in the universe, that are that close-minded, it kind of really blows my mind. I was like, out of all the freaking galaxies that are out there, and there's no life, thinking there's no life out there after that, it's kind of mind-boggling to me.
A CIA...
There is life out there. I almost want to, not guaranteed. I'm not I'm saying there's a possibility there is. I'm not saying there isn't, nor you know what I mean. But there's a higher probability of life being out there than there is not. I'm just saying, because now with the UFOs, with crafts that the military has no idea that it's not that is not known in any countries Air Force, and not knowing what they're seeing right now. Yeah, so kind of has it going.
Group called the Psychological Strategy Board concluded that the people in the United States are prone to mass hysteria when it comes to UFOs, and that we should be actively debunking.
Yeah, exactly. MC Sleeves, unless if there's alien life close to quote unquote close, which is I don't know what would close be. Honestly, I honestly I know nothing within the universe really distance wise and stuff, but if there were alien life closer to our galaxy and stuff, and could possibly make it to Earth, that's the only way. But yeah, if there's alien life out very far on beyond, then I don't see them coming to Earth at all.
Any organization or person or group that is trying to get to the bottom of UFOs or other unexplained phenomena. It seems like the reasoning behind this was to protect the public from themselves. They did not want the public to discover something as momentous as the discovery of a UFO that is connected to extraterrestrials.
Exactly, MC Sleeves. It's it's crazy how far away Mars and all the other planets are to Earth, and it's just fucking crazy.
Or some other unexplained phenomenon. They didn't want the public to discover that. They wanted the government to make that discovery so it could be controlled. And
brother, come on, brother, bring your ass up here, brother.
narrative could be controlled and they could protect the public from falling into mass hysteria. Now, while we don't know if the government actually listened to this recommendation and began aggressively censoring any group or organization that was trying to get answers about UFOs, what we do know is that the government at the same time was investing real money to do their own research about UFOs. In December of 2017, the Pentagon had to come out and confirm the existence of a particular program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program after 2 of their videos had been leaked. This highly classified, highly controversial government-funded program investigated UFOs. The 2 leaked videos were filmed by American service members, pilots, when they saw these objects that were flying around Earth that were demonstrating what this program described as advanced physics, which is basically things humans haven't figured out how to do yet. The objects were able to accelerate with g-forces that were too much for the human body to withstand. They could reach hypersonic speeds with no sonic boom and no heat trail. They also seemed to resist Earth's gravitational pull, despite not looking particularly aerodynamic enough to have lift or thrust. Metamaterials that came from these UFOs were made up of materials that you can't find naturally on Earth and would be extremely expensive to replicate. According to a Pentagon briefing this group gave in 2009 about all of their research into UFOs, they concluded,
Yo, Bunny, I love it. Friday Night Frights. I love it. Oh my God, I'm going to steal it. I'm going to steal that, Bunny. And welcome. Nice for you to stop by. I love it. Friday Night Frights. I wish I thought of that. I'm stealing it.
that the United States would not be able to protect itself against some of the technology they had discovered. And these 2 videos that we're seeing are only the ones that were leaked. And in April of 2020, the Pentagon came out and officially confirmed those 2 leaked videos from 2017 were authentic. And to this day, the crafts or objects that were spotted in those videos are still listed as unidentified. They wouldn't say that unless they made sure it was
Yeah, that's 100% true.
It's not just another military craft or some other conventional explanation, meaning really, we don't know what these things are. Here are the 2 video clips.
I believe this video is from a FA-18 of jet, fighter jet. That pilot.
Roger. There's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly.
Even the pilots, you can tell. That's so genuine. That's a genuine reaction. Oh, got it.
No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it.
See, even the co-pilot and everyone is like, what is that, man?
Fly. Oh, target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly. Yeah, going on, bro.
Hey, Rage Field version. Nice for you to stop by.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Look at that damn thing. Look at that damn thing.
That's not LNS though, is it? It's not. That is LNS, dude.
Is it changing? Yeah, look at that
That's
son
not
bitch.
LNS though, is it? It's not. That is LNS.
Changing directions.
Well, if there's like...
Look at that. Whoa!
It's rotating.
Just 30 years ago, we had not discovered a single planet outside of our solar system. Today, we've discovered over 4,500 of them, and of all those planets we're discovering, 1 in 5 of them, scientists now say, are most likely habitable. There's really 2 criteria for a planet to be considered habitable. 1, it needs to be rocky, and 2, it needs to fall into the Goldilocks zone, where it's in its star's orbit in a place where it's neither too hot or too cold, allowing water to be in liquid form. One of the best chances we have so far at finding life on another one of these habitable planets.
Holy shit, Bunny. That's freaking crazy being... Oh my god. Hey, yeah, well, nice work, all boy. I know, I love Mr. Ballin. Great American hero, Navy SEAL.
Is a planet called Ross 128b. It orbits an inactive red dwarf star, meaning it's likely not being bludgeoned by solar radiation, and we've detected strange signals emanating from the nearby host star, signals that perhaps have intelligent origins. Another habitable planet is Proxima b. It also happens to be the closest habitable planet to Earth, and is a lot like Ross 128b. However, the red dwarf it revolves around is much more temperamental and periodically casts out massive amounts of radiation that does make life quite difficult. It's also tidally locked and in synchronous rotation with its star, meaning one side of the planet is always facing the star and getting completely torched all the time. The other side, the dark side of the planet, never faces the star, and so everything is frozen. And so the only place liquid water could exist on Proxima b would be at the equator. Another area of the universe that scientists are focused on to try to see if there's life there right now, or could be life, is an area called the TRAPPIST-1 system. It's actually 7 different planets, all of which are considered habitable, that are orbiting around this one particular red dwarf. The really cool thing about this particular system is that the 7 planets are super close together. So close that if you were standing on one, you could look up and see all of the others, and you're so close, you could actually make out geologic formations like mountains, and you could see clouds, and in theory, you could actually travel between the different planets. So imagine going on vacation to another planet. But to really get you thinking, a new study just released its results this month in October.
Jesus!
October 2020, they looked at all 4,500 plus planets that are outside the solar system, and they ranked them according to how likely they are to sustain life. Not whether they're currently sustaining life, but looking at their conditions of how good of a planet are they to sustain life. And out of the 4,500, there were 24 at the top of the list that not only can sustain life, but actually can sustain life better than Earth can. They are considered super habitable, and they are literally better places to live than Earth is, which is definitely a foreign concept for most people because they think of Earth as like this oasis in this vast universe where everything lined up perfectly to sustain human life. And already, just out of the 4,500 planets that were reviewed that have only been discovered in the past 30 years, right? There's lots more planets out there. We've already found 24 that are better than Earth at sustaining life. So what happens when we discover there are millions, if not billions of planets out there? Just
see, that's what I'm saying. Like, what if there's like so much like,
probability alone says there's going to be a heck of a lot more planets out there that are better at sustaining life than Earth, which really forces you to come to terms with the reality that almost certainly we are not alone. So that's going to do it, guys.
Yeah, he's from the... Yeah. Holy shit. Damn, that's crazy Lauren's only working long. I didn't know that. Well, of course I didn't know that. What am I talking about? Holy shit. That's crazy, man. Oh my god. That's really cool. So from aliens... So from UFOs, we're gonna do... Ooh, we need to do something creepy. Let's do this. I'm just gonna play this one. This was... Yeah. I'm gonna play this one. It's another Mr. Ballin video. It's called Top 3 Random Encounters with Serial Killers.
Experts believe in the United States alone, there are at least 2,000 active, uncaught serial killers just running wild. Which means if you live in America, you may have already had an interaction with a serial killer. You just didn't know it. But today, I'm going to share 3 progressively more disturbing cases of Americans that had an interaction with a serial killer, but came to find out later that it was a serial killer. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, then please schedule the like button for a fight with Paul on the day before Thanksgiving in Quincy, Massachusetts. Also, please subscribe to my channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Exactly. I love Lauren content, but sometimes like I've been wanting to do something different for a while, Ellie, and I'm really glad a lot of people have been liking this so far. So um yeah, I'm gonna be like doing like I'm still gonna do Lauren stuff, but then at time like there's gonna be other streams too that I want to do like stuff like this, or you know what I mean? Like something other than Lauren, just to give people like instead of just getting hounded on top of Lauren stuff, I kind of just want to do something different just to refresh everyone. Yeah, actually, yeah, well, I actually did that yesterday. Yeah, well, from Mr. Ball, and I did a couple of his missing 411 yesterday.
After spending 21 years in the US Army, a man retires and moves to Central Florida with his wife and young son. Although his family had plenty of money because he had a pension coming in and his wife still worked full-time, he just got bored really quickly after moving to Central Florida and decided he would just take a job doing something just to stay occupied. And so he ended up taking a job at a highway gas station. One of the primary reasons he chose this particular job is because the owner...
I am really appreciating everyone that's like really liking this. I really do. Thank you.
of the gas station
Everyone.
didn't care if his son came along to help him stock shelves and hang out behind the cash register. And so for years, that's just how...
I'm not gonna lie, sorry for pausing again. I was actually very nervous on doing something other than Lauren because I wasn't sure how everyone would be. So I just wanted to do it.
It went. The man would work at the gas station and his son would tag along. Even after his son became a teenager and you'd think might be wanting to do other things, well, the town was so small, there was almost nothing to do. So his son still came along well into his teenage years. One night in 1990, his son, who was 15 years old at the time, was at the station and he was actually taking a break sitting outside on a picnic table. He was reading a magazine, drinking a Mountain Dew, and it's dark out, and he notices out of the corner of his eye that there is a woman walking off of the highway towards the gas station. It was a very quiet night at the time, so there's no cars getting gas, there's nobody there, and there's not really anybody even driving on the highway, and so that's why she really stood out to him. And he turns and he notices her and he thinks to himself, no one ever walks to our gas station. We're on a highway. Everybody drives here. So she must have broken down and she must be coming here to try to use our phone to call a tow truck or something like that. So the woman is walking across the lot, coming closer and closer to the gas station, and the boy at this point has turned his attention back to his magazine, but he would say later that he kept looking up and keeping an eye on her because there was something off about her. The woman ultimately walks right behind him and goes in the door into the gas station. Doesn't acknowledge the boy, doesn't say hi to him, just walks straight inside, and she starts walking up and down the aisles of the gas station. Now, from where the boy was sitting, it's all glass, so he could clearly look in and see his father behind the counter, and he could see the head of this woman as she walked in and around all these aisles. And as soon as the woman was in the store, kind of pacing around the aisles, the boy put his magazine down and was just watching. And he noticed that she was not really shopping. She was just looking down for a few seconds, wouldn't pick anything up, so she wasn't buying anything. And she would look up at the counter where his father was, and she would just stare at him, and then she'd look back down at what she was doing, and she would go through all the aisles. And at some point, the woman just kind of abandons this phony, I'm pretending to shop routine, and just walks up to the counter. Now, nobody else is in the store. There's nobody else coming in. And so the boy could actually fairly clearly hear what she was saying to his father. And she told his father that she had broken down and she needed a ride, and could he drive her to Ocala, which was the next big town north of this gas station. And the boy would say that his father acted very strangely, because his father is normally incredibly pleasant with all the customers. He's very chatty even. Like, he talks to everybody who comes in the store. But as soon as this woman had gone in, his dad had seemed kind of dismissive and almost rude to this woman. And when she was talking to him, asking for a ride, he just said, "No, I won't give you a ride." The woman is annoyed by how quickly she's been shot down. But instead of just taking no for an answer, she turns and looks at the boy who's sitting out on the bench, who's looking right at her, and she points at the boy and she says, "What about him? Is he your son? Can he give me a ride?" The boy notices that his father, who's not within her eyesight, is looking at his son going, "No. Like, whatever she wants from you, you're going to say no to it." And the boy's a little bit confused by this, because he's still trying to understand why his dad was so against helping this woman, because she clearly needs our help, or someone's help. But he just took his dad at face value. And when the woman's pointing at him, he knew, the boy, that if she came over and asked him, he would say no. But it wouldn't come to that, because the boy's father would say to the woman, "No, my son's not going to give you a ride. You need to leave here immediately. Do not come back. Leave. We're not going to help you." She's furious. She's cussing him out. She storms out and slams the...
Bro, that would be so weird to see. Like, as a kid, seeing, like, being like, what the fuck is going on right now?
"No, my son's not going to give you a ride. You need to leave here immediately. Do not come
Sorry,
back. Leave.
I
We're
got
not gonna
really,
help you."
really
She's
stuck
furious.
into this.
She's cussing him out. She storms out and slams the door. She starts cussing at the boy, and she walks off. The whole time she's turning around and flipping them off and screaming profanities at
Wow.
them. But she ultimately walks off, and the dad kind of followed her out and is standing next to his son as she walks off. And the boy asks his dad, like, what was her deal? Why did that happen? Why did you not want to help her? And the dad just said, "I don't know. There was something off about her, and I don't know how to place."
That's that sixth sense that you have. That predator, almost like that predator instinct in you. Or like your heightened sense, like, you just know. Sometimes you just get that feeling with people. You just know something's off.
But I did not want her around you. I knew I didn't want to give her a ride. I knew she had to go. A year later, the boy is in his room when he hears his dad in the other room yelling for him to come in here and look at the TV. So he runs into the TV room, and on the TV is the same woman from the gas station, better known as Eileen Warnos. She was a serial killer who used to pick up her male victims at gas stations.
Wait, what?
Room, and on the TV
Oh,
is the same woman from the gas station, better known
Yes, this lady, she creeps me the fuck out.
as Eileen Warnos. She was a serial killer who used to pick up her male victims at gas stations in Florida. It's unclear whether the boy or the boy's father were her next victims. But by the time she had shown up at that gas station, she had already killed 4 people. And following that interaction with them at the gas station, she had gone on to kill 3 more people, including someone in Ocala, Florida, which was the town she had asked them to give her a ride to. Eileen had been caught, that's why she was on TV, and she was later sentenced to death.
Yep. I know. She gives me the chills. Hey, Calamity. Jesus Christ, Majestic. I am having a hard time pronouncing everyone's names today. Don't judge me. You can judge me if you want to. Nice for you to stop by. Welcome, my friend.
In the late 1970s, a medical student going to school in Chicago had just gotten out of class and decided he didn't want to pay for a taxi, so he decided he would hitchhike his way home. Now, this was something he routinely did, and at the time was socially acceptable.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's oh my god, I love Mr. Ballin.
So he goes down to the road and he puts his thumb out, and eventually a car pulls up, and he would describe the man that is pulling up as looking normal and even friendly and lighthearted. It's a middle-aged guy, and he tells the student, "Hey, come on in, hop inside, I'll give you a ride." The student did not feel threatened by this guy and felt like overall this was safe, and so he hops in the passenger seat. He tells this man where he wants to go. He says, okay, and they start driving off. So as they're driving, it's silent in the car. They're not making chit chat. They're just driving along. And the student notices that the man misses the turn to go where he needs to go. And so the student turns to the man and says, hey, you missed the turn. Do you mind turning around and going back this way? Or, if you want, you can just drop me off here and I'm happy to walk. We're not that far away. The man, who had seemed really nice and lighthearted, suddenly had this really intense demeanor come over him. And he turns and looks at the student and goes, oh no, you're coming with me. The student is frozen in fear. He doesn't know what to do, but he knows that...
Oh, God. Oh, no. You're coming with me. I'll be like, nope.
Oh no, you're coming with me. The student is frozen in fear. He
I'd be
doesn't
like,
know what to do, but he knows immediately that this is not an idle threat. I don't know who he is. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be bad for me. I have to get out.
That's why you don't pick up hitchhikers. I am sorry if you do. But your probability of running into a serial killer is...
And so as soon as the car began to slow down even a little bit, they're still driving, they're not stopped. The student unlocks the door, opens the car, and jumps out of the moving car and smashes into the ground, rolls against the side of the curb, but is ultimately unhurt. He's banged up from jumping out of a moving car, but he was able to stand up and run back to his house. He didn't call the police because he really didn't know what to tell them, because he didn't have a great description of the guy, he didn't have his license plate, and the guy didn't do anything totally aggressive. It was more of a threat, but an ambiguous threat at best. It wasn't really clear what he wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
It definitely did not seem good, but...
Yeah, exactly. You don't know, so... Well... Oh, yeah. God damn it. He was the hitchhiker. God damn it. Wait. Is this John Wayne Gacy? I'm thinking that's what it is. I think that's who it is.
It just wasn't enough for him to call the police. And so the student just feels lucky that he got out of there and moves on with his life. A couple of years go by. The student at this point has basically forgotten about this encounter with the stranger. And he's sitting in a cafe, he's drinking some coffee, and there's...
Roach Goer, I am not asleep yet. But thanks for stopping by.
a TV on behind him. He wasn't paying attention to it, but the reporter on the TV said something that immediately piqued his interest. The reporter was talking about a guy that was currently on death row that apparently had removed all of the inside car door handles inside of his car after his first would-be victim, a college student, had apparently escaped by opening a car door while he was moving. The student runs over to the TV and sees on the screen there is an image of the guy they're talking about, this guy on death row, and it's the same guy who gave him a ride 2 years earlier. His name was John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown. He had killed over 30...
Oh, shit! God damn!
This guy
Fuck John Wayne Gacy.
on death row, and it's the same guy who gave him a ride 2 years earlier. His name was John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown. He had killed over 30 men and boys in Chicago, and then after killing them in his clown room, he would stuff them into a secret crawl space in his basement. And although we can't be certain, it seems extremely likely that this med student was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, but he leapt out of the car, forcing John Wayne Gacy to change his strategy and make sure the
Wow. Wow.
next person was not able to do that.
Wow. Just imagine that. You're about... Holy shit. Holy fuck. Ooh, that just gave me... Oh my god, I got the goosebumps right now. Oh my... I'm not kidding. I have goosebumps going on right now. Yeah, I did guess, Gacy.
In the 1970s,
Ellie.
a young woman and young man were on their very first date together, and it wasn't going very well. It wasn't going badly, it was just really, really awkward. They just were not meshing at all. And so as they're getting ready to leave and retire for the night, the guy is thinking to himself, I have nothing to lose here.
6'9"? Holy shit. That's a... Holy shit. 6'9", 300 pounds. Jesus Christ. Fuck me. That's a fucking giant of a killer. Oh, you're fucked. If that fucker gets a hold of you. Hey, one of those weirdos? Hello? Hello?
Here, we're probably not.
I was really fascinated with the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski. I'm actually really, I used, for one of my criminal justice classes, I actually did a paper on him.
Not going to go on a second date. And he says to the woman, hey, do you want to not go home right now and actually come on a hike with me? And he goes, I know this sounds like a terrible idea, but hear me out. I go mountain climbing in this area called Provo Canyon. It's not that far from here. There are these beautiful trails that lead up the side of the canyon to these amazing scenic overlooks. And tonight it's a new moon, so there's great visibility. And I just think that you might enjoy it. And so at first the woman is,
Hi, thank you, Lauren's Only Working Lung. Definitely now. I will watch that.
obviously a little bit hesitant. But when he says, look, I go hiking there at night all the time. I love it out there. And I promise if there's any weirdness, if you don't like being there, we'll just turn around and leave. It's totally safe. And so after a little bit of coaxing, she finally says, okay, you know what? That sounds
Richard Kuklinski, he was oh, he's a different breed of serial killers.
fun. Let's go do it. And so their date that had been really awkward suddenly became really
Freaking using cyanide to kill people.
exciting. And the two of them were kind of like thrilled, like, wow, look at us making our way up for a nighttime hike through Provo Canyon. And so they arrive at the mouth of this canyon, and they're both obviously excited. And they hop out and they start walking up this trail that brings them into a heavily forested section of the canyon. Now, to this point, the guy felt like this was a really great idea. He really had gone hiking here a bunch, and he really did know the area well. But as the trail brought them into the forested area, the guy remembers feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. He didn't know why, it was just like an overwhelming sense of anxiety that something bad was going to happen to them. But he had worked so hard to convince his date to come with him, and had convinced her it was safe, that he's not about to let on to her.
Remember that serial killer? That was I forgot his name, but he was on the TV show. I think the dating show, that date show or whatever. That was like way back in the day in the 60s or 70s. The dating show or whatever. That guy was so fucking weird. That serial killer that was on there. And the chick actually picked him and got a weird vibe off of him. And then, like, dude. Oh my God. That'd be like, what the fuck? That's like a what the fuck moment right there. Yes, buddy. Thank you.
That there was anything wrong with what they were doing. And so he put on, his strong face and just kind of suppressed it and just kept on walking and, holding her hand tight.
Yeah, Ed Gein is a fucking, oh my God. That's a whole nother, Ed Gein and H.H. Holmes are right up there. One of my, that I'm very fascinated with.
And they just continued their walk. But his sense of dread would just build and build to the point where he was really...
He thought he was, sorry for pausing again. They thought, had a theory that I really liked, that H.H. Holmes was actually Jack the Ripper.
On edge. And what he didn't know, but would find out later, is that his date, the woman, she also had this horrible sense of dread as soon as they went into the forest. But she didn't want to tell him because she didn't want to seem like a party pooper, because he seemed really excited about it. At some point, as they're walking down this path, the man steps on something that felt soft. He didn't know what it was, but it caused him to freeze immediately. And he's holding her hand. He kind of jerks her to get her to stop. And before he can even look down and see what he's standing on, he hears rustling coming from the bushes just off the trail. She hears it too, and both of them, without saying a word to each other, because again, you got to remember, they're both really stressed. They haven't let on to the other how stressed they are, but they're both basically ready to leave. And so the two of them turn around and they hightail it out of there. He has no idea what he stepped on, They don't know what they heard in the bushes, but they don't care.
That's a good theory right there, Rage-Filled Virgin, about Lauren. Thinking he's a fucking idiot, and actually he turns out to be a fucking, like, high profile fucking serial killer. Never fucking know with Lauren.
Anxiety was so high, they just wanted to leave. Years later, that man and woman who had this very strange date would actually be married. And they'd be sitting down watching TV together, and they're flipping through the channels, and they land on an interview with a death row inmate. And the interviewer is asking the inmate, was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed?
Oh yeah, I can't ever forget about the BTK. Because he was over in Kansas City area. And the Green River Killer. Yeah.
And the guy being interviewed says, yes, one time. I was in the forest up in Provo Canyon one night, and a young couple came walking up the trail. I didn't see him, so I only had a chance to jump into the bushes right next to the trail, and the guy actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. But for some reason, he didn't look down and see what he was standing on, and the two of them didn't.
That's just crazy that they haven't been able to figure out who Jack the Ripper is yet. That's just like how it's still a cold case still is just fascinating.
Notice me just a few feet away from them. They just turned around and walked away. Turns out that young couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Before Bundy was
Ooh, Richard Ramirez is a good one too. Oh shit. Holy shit, that's Ted Bundy.
around and walked away. Turns out that young couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Before Bundy was executed, he confessed to over 30 murders, but many people believe the true number of victims is much, much, much higher. So that's gonna do it, guys. Let me know what you thought.
That is Raider. Wasn't he kind of also like a stalker, if I remember? Like he would like stalk him, I think, for a little bit, and then that's when he went in for the. That's when he went in. I think I can't remember. Fuck, he was a good one too, BTK. He thought he was very clever. I just love how he had an 87 moment when he like mailed like sent the police like a letter or something. That's when he had an 87 moment and fucked up and got himself caught. Anyways, we're gonna do some animal attack stories now. We're gonna start one of them. Actually, we're gonna start the animal stories with one of my favorite bird. With the world's most dangerous bird, the cassowary. We're gonna listen to the worst cassowary attacks ever reported. Just imagine just getting a fucking attacked by a fucking aggressive bird. I can't even fly. Oh my god.
All right, well,
This is from When Animals Attack channel. I'll actually copy it right now and then put it in the stream. There we go. Yeah, the cassowary. Here we go.
welcome back to An Animals Attack, y'all. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. So typically when I do, videos like this, it's usually a unique story. You know what I mean? Like something that I haven't covered before.
Yeah. This is a very good channel. I like it. When Animals Attack. Well, then again, I'm also fucking kind of crazy. So.
By the way. But before I ramble off or anything, today we're going to be talking about cassowaries.
Yeah, cassowaries.
And
Look at these fuckers. Oh, God. I think they're like the third largest bird, or like right behind the ostrich or the emu, but they're very aggressive though.
to be honest with you, until about 2 years ago, I never really knew what cassowaries even were. You know what I mean? I thought it was like some kind of dish, to be honest with you. Now, in terms of cassowary attacks, there have been 2 of them that have been fatal. Okay,
God damn, just imagine getting attacked by a bird and that kills you. Fuck. Oh! God damn, nature.
tallest bird in the world.
Oh,
Like
shit.
ostriches are the third largest or the third tallest bird.
Okay, there it is. Yeah, that's what I thought. They're the third tallest bird in the world.
Reason, okay? They are quite a formidable force. They have weapons, okay? These birds are known as the closest living relative to dinosaurs, and I also think it's important that
Actually, the stone hit, like the stone billed stork or something, that, like, that one, it looks like a fucking dinosaur too.
people know just how much damage these birds can actually cause. Now, before getting into these weapons, I will tell
Look at
you
those-
that the people of Papua New Guinea,
Yeah, that's right. Papua New Guinea is where mostly these fuckers land.
the indigenous people there, they actually believed cassowaries to be reincarnations of their female ancestors, which I found to be, pretty trippy. Like just viewing an animal as a spirit. That it's common in indigenous cultures, many indigenous cultures throughout the world. But just looking at the cassowary and like, look at this picture. You know what I mean?
Bro, look at this fucker.
Like just imagining a spirit of your female ancestor, right? Like
Here, I'm trying to skip forward till we get to the stories.
is that the females, in other words, they're much more brightly colored. They're larger in size, and not to mention they're polyandrous, which means they mate with multiple males, and the males actually are the ones that take care of the eggs, and that's quite opposite of what you'd see in nature.
Wow, that's very interesting. The males take care of the eggs.
And that's quite opposite of what you'd see in nature, period. Like there's only a few species of animals, period, that do that. It's usually the females that are incubating the eggs and whatnot, like a mother hen. You know what I mean? But yeah, no. In this case, it's the men or the males rather that take care. The male cassowaries will be taking care of the eggs, and they also take care of them. Take care of the offspring, just so up until they're ready to, go off on their own, which is by the time they're about 3 years old, I think is when they reach maturity. But I think they
Timothy Goodwin, nice for you to stop by. Welcome, my friend.
will probably leave being with the parents after about 9 months to a year. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I will
Wow. I'll have to look into the Sean Gillis guy. That's very interesting.
correct that over here in the comments. So in terms of their physical characteristics, like I was saying, those weapons, they have 3-toed feet, each of which sport a claw that can reach up to 5 inches in length.
Yeah, that's right. Look at that. Look at that.
And coupled with these extremely powerful kicks that they can launch, they use these claws to disembowel.
Oh, yeah. So basically, if they hit you in your stomach, your intestines are basically, your guts are falling out. Basically, when these fuckers kick you.
Potential predators. And although they might
Jesus
be flightless
Christ.
birds,
I sound fucking drunk as shit, and I haven't even had anything to drink. Actually, I lied. I just had a thing of tequila just now, but
like I was saying, they're still excellent swimmers. They can run up to 31 miles per hour, so no humans outrunning.
that's the other thing too. If it wasn't for our brain, we would be fucked. Honestly, everything is faster than humans, besides sloths and walruses. Everything else is faster than humans. If you think about it. Like, we would be genuinely fucked if it wasn't for our brains, honestly. Literally. If you think about it in the real world, like, if it just came down to it, we will be fucked. Like, we suck at swimming compared to, like, all the other animals. I'm sure we would evolve or something like that, like, into something else. But, like, if we really think of it, like, fuck. Squirrels are faster than us. Fucking chipmunks. Jesus Christ. Everything. Literally, everything. It's faster than humans. Oh my god.
That, and not to mention, these guys can jump 7 feet in the air, right? Like, you're clearing Shaq. You know what I mean? You're basically clearing Shaq. That's insane. And I mean, if you had like, if birds could play ball, I'd have a cassowary would be my #1 pick in the NBA. I'll tell you that, man. You could probably goat that bird, like, you know, certified, stamped. Not to mention they probably have to raise the rims from like 10 to 20 feet. You know, if you're jumping 7 feet in the air, you know what I mean?
God damn. Okay, I wasn't expecting like a fucking long, like, okay, never mind. Hold on. I'm gonna change it up to this because he's just gonna talk about cassowaries and himself. This is on When Animals Attack channel. But we're gonna go to one of my favorites. Actually, we're gonna jump over to Final Afflictions channel. The most brutal bear attacks marathon.
Welcome to another Bear Attack Stories marathon.
Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, love bears, but also hate them at the same time. Because if they get a hold of you, you're fucked. There we go.
Showcasing some of the most brutal bear
Oh,
attacks
yeah,
covered on
baby.
the channel.
Yep, here we go. Get into
November
it.
4th, 1988. 3 friends decide to go hunting on Baranof Island. This island is one of a few in the Alaskan Alexander Archipelago that borders Canada. It is a wildlife haven. Humpback whales, dolphins, otters, and porpoises frequent the icy waters. Its northern tip is used by a breeding colony of stellar sea lions. The island is also home to mountain goats, Sitka black-tailed deer, and grizzly bears. Harley Sievenpiper, David Trago, and James Hendricks arrived at the southeastern corner of Baranof Island at Port Alexander for their hunting adventure. They carried with them camping gear, rifles, and ammunition. Their target was the Sitka deer. They were experienced hunters and decided to spread out to cover more ground and find their prey. From Port Alexander, they trekked from the shoreline up into the forest. The beauty of the scenery was stunning. The skies were overcast and gray. A damp drizzle filled the air. While Harley remained closer to the shoreline, the others headed deeper into the forest.
Hey, Kingpin, nice for you to stop by.
As Harley cut up further away from the beach, he came across the perfect hunting ground. The trees opened out into a wide plateau of muskeg or peat bog. It was an ideal place to spot deer that came wandering into the clearing from the forest.
Oh, look at that buck.
Quietly, he set down his backpack and raised his rifle, scoping the open expanse. Following the tree line around the bog, he saw nothing. All was quiet, all was still. Only the occasional bird was heard. Harley lay down on the damp ground, keeping his eyes on the forest clearing. Patiently, he waited. Lying there, he lifted his deer collar to his mouth and blew. It mimicked the sound of a distressed fawn. Harley paused and held his breath. He could hear nothing. He blew the collar once more. He pricked his ears and scanned the tree line. The thrill of the wait was building. Any minute now, a deer could emerge into view. Any minute now, he could have his shot. As he lay there calling, listening, anticipating, he suddenly heard something. He looked to his left to see an enormous brown bear charging at him. There was no warning,
Jesus,
He looked to his left to see an enormous brown bear charging at him. There was no warning, there was no
oh, fuck me. Fuck.
time to react. This wasn't a mock charge, the bear was onto him.
God damn. That was a bluff charge. I would just shit my pants.
Harley managed to let out a loud cry as the bear smashed into him, sending his rifle flying into the muskeg.
Shoot it!
The bear sunk its teeth into
God damn, I would have been blasting that sumbitch. That guy had more control than I did.
Harley's neck. It dug its claws into his shoulders, pinning him to the ground. Harley could hardly breathe. The sheer weight from the bear crushed his bones. The bear's jowls were dripping. Its breath was...
Oh, that's the that's the other thing with bears. They're not predators. I mean, they're not carnivorous, so they won't kill you right away. So they're omnivores. So they'll keep you alive while they're taking chunks out of you. So they'll put their giant paw on top of you, and this, like, tigers, they're predators. So they'll go after your neck, or like any cat, or like any top predator, like that, like feline wise, they'll go after the neck and then just end you like that. Bears, on the other hand, they like to hold you down and start ripping flesh out of you, chunks out of you while you're alive. So you can feel every second of it.
Warm and wet, only inches from his own face. Harley let out an ear-piercing scream as the bear tore flesh from bone. The 700-pound grizzly bear attacked Harley
Oh, Jesus,
so ferociously that his attempts to fight back were in vain. With the wind knocked from his lungs, the heavy weight of the animal pinning him into the cold, wet peatland, in such vicious bites and slashes, Harley only managed to scream out again.
Hey, medieval bully, nice for you to show boy.
And again, a blood-curdling scream that his two friends heard echoing through the forest. Harley was dead within minutes. Hearing their friends' distressed cries, David and James came running. They jumped over logs and dived under branches, calling out Harley's name. They ran as fast as they could, clutching their rifles and tearing through the undergrowth. When they got to the forest clearing, they could see nothing. They could hear nothing. Not a cry or a scream, not a growl or a grunt. All was quiet once more, as if nothing had happened. They called out again, searching around. They found Harley's backpack, right where he had left it. Then they saw it, a sight that shook them to the core.
Ah, damn, look at the size of that bear.
Right where he had left it. Then,
God damn, oh my God, look at the size of that sumbitch.
they saw it, a sight that shook them to the core. They saw a large pool of fresh blood on the ground.
God damn, that's a big grizzly. Damn.
Shrubs had been flattened. They could see the struggle that had ensued. The earth had been torn up and thrown around.
Oh,
The trail
fuck.
of blood led off into the undergrowth.
Uh-oh.
The two men ran as fast as they could to go and find help. They knew that Harley must be dead. They knew that he must have been taken by a bear.
Yeah, what did he expect?
And they knew that the same bear was still out.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I'll play Lauren here in a second. In a few.
Through the rugged terrain, they made it back to Port Alexander. With its prey subdued, the bear had dragged Harley's body for...
Oh my God, this is like... Oh my God. Just the way the bear dragged that fucking moose.
to Port Alexander. With its
That's fucking horrifying.
prey subdued,
Look, it's like carrying that moose like it's fucking nothing.
the bear had dragged Harley's body for half a mile parallel to the beach, looking for thicker cover to feed at its leisure. The bear then dragged Harley for another mile deeper into the woods.
Yeah, it's a Friday night frights, so yeah. Honestly there isn't any Lauren calls tonight. I'm
With
sorry.
night closing in, a search and rescue operation wasn't initiated until
This is non-Lauren. I need a break from Lauren, honestly. So
the following day.
I get it. No one wants to watch this stuff, but I'm just trying to do something that I enjoy watching, so that's why.
Harley's distraught friends sat up all night, waiting and wondering. The thought of their friend being taken so savagely and so suddenly haunted them. The thought that his body was still out there was a chilling one. Fish and Wildlife Trooper Roland Young and Don Clutting, a member of the Sitka Volunteer Fire Department Search and Rescue Squad, headed up the search the next day. They flew down from Sitka to Port
Hey, stumble, repent, repeat. Nice for you to show boy.
Alexander to commence their search. They
Hey, Billy the
were
Kid.
joined by a dozen residents
Nice for you to show boy.
of Port Alexander, all eager to help and locate the missing 40-year-old man. David and James led them to the spot where the attack happened. The search and rescue team were able to follow the trail left as the bear dragged Harley
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
away. There was so much blood at the initial site that Roland Young was quite sure that Harley had been killed then and there before being dragged off.
I still need to fucking watch that movie, The Revenant.
The trail was relatively easy to follow. The trodden undergrowth was marked with blood, and as the search team stepped deeper into the woodland, their nerves were on a knife edge. They knew they were getting closer to the bear. They began to find torn pieces of clothing and items belonging to Harley scattered along the trail they were following. His glasses were found on the ground amongst the leaves. His
Yeah, polar bears. If it's a polar bear, you're fucked.
rifle lay submerged
Oh, fun fact about polar bears: they can smell seals under 3 feet of ice. If that doesn't. I'm getting chills right now. If that doesn't send chills up your spine, I don't know what does. That's fucking horrifying.
in the peat bog, contents of his pockets strewn to one side. With every rustle in the trees and every chirp from a bird, the team jumped. Their hearts were racing.
Ellie, I did, and I started dying laughing because it's like you're supposed to have this happy moment, then all of a sudden you have this grizzly bear ripping the shreds out of the fucking moose on the other side of the river or whatever it was. And it's just, I don't know why. I just started busting out laughing when I first saw that. It's just like everyone's like, "Oh my god, look at that! It's a bear!" And it was like, "Whoa!" It's just like ripping the shreds out of this moose.
There was a predator within yards of them, and they were the prey. 3 of the men decided to wait on a nearby ledge, keeping an eye out for an approaching bear.
Oh yeah, Billy the Kid. Polar bears will actively hunt humans, because it's so scarce up there, like in the Arctic area. Yeah, if they see a human, they don't consider it. They just see it as prey, like that's food, because it's so scarce for food up there.
Everyone had their rifles locked, loaded, and raised and ready. The others continued along the trail of
That is odd.
blood and torn clothing. Creeping forwards, placing each foot carefully in front of the other, they suddenly heard a menacing growl. Their hearts leapt into their chests, pounding in their rib cages. Peering through the thick tree cover, they could just see the head of a grizzly standing over its kill. It was staring right at the 3 men on the ledge and went charging towards them. The others,
God damn! Oh my god! I can only imagine. Oh my god! Fuck!
who had approached it from amongst the trees,
You know what? That one guy, the bear man or whoever that got eaten alive by a bear. He had it coming. I'm not gonna lie. He had it coming. The bear man or whoever. Oh yeah, he had that bear attack coming.
felt the bear rush past them. Its feet thundered on the damp ground. Its tremendous speed and power forced bushes and branches to the earth. They aimed their guns and shot the bear. The first shots hit the bear directly in the ribs, but the great animal didn't even flinch. It continued to bound towards the 3 horrified men. With nowhere to go, they were trapped. Another 2 shots fired. This time, it struck the bear near the shoulder, and it fell to the ground, just 3 feet from the search team. They fired once more into the animal's skull. The search and rescue team were shaken by the
Yeah, grizzly man. I don't know. I thought it was bear man.
close call. The bear had nearly charged them down. The fearlessness and aggression displayed by this mighty and powerful grizzly had unnerved the team. Then came the devastating and harrowing job of moving Harley's remains from where they lay. He had been mostly devoured by the bear. It seems it had been a predatory attack rather than one of territorial dominance. Mock charges are common when territory has been encroached upon. If a bear does follow through with an attack, it often walks away after the initial attack if it considers you were no longer a threat.
Now they want if you're also this to give you guys a tip. If you're ever in an area where it's like high profile for bear activity, especially grizzly, black bear, have a heavy duty backpack on you and exactly do what Coyote here did. Just like do the cover your neck and interlock your fingers. But yeah, if you have a heavy duty, like a good enough heavy duty backpack on you, usually they like to go for your back area. So like it'll just fuck up the back, but you're still gonna end up with like you're still gonna get fucked up, but it could actually save your life if you have a good enough backpack on you hiking in like a high populated bear country.
In the case of Harley, this had been the first fatal bear encounter in Southeast Alaska for more than a decade. On average, deadly bear attacks occur once every 3 or 4 years in Alaska. Between 2000 and 2017, there were 66 bear attacks in Alaska. Sadly, 10
these two grizzlies going at it in the middle of the road.
2017, there were 66 bear attacks in Alaska. Sadly, 10 of these proved fatal. But everyone knows that when you enter bear country, you do so at your own risk. This time, the hunter became the hunted, and sadly, met his terrifying final affliction. It was supposed to be a fresh start for 37-year-old Patty McConnell and 2 of her children, Kelly, 13, and Kristen, 7.
What? Kingpin? Polar bears attacking the chopper, really?
From Texas, they had packed their bags and headed north. Their destination was Alaska.
Yep, keep that Glock. Keep that Glock on hand, bro.
The great wilderness, the fresh air, the sense of adventure, and the prospect of new beginnings. With a long and arduous journey behind them and more than 12 hours ahead of them, Patty decided to pull over for a break. She spotted a sign along the highway, Liard River Hot Springs Provincial Park. It seemed like the perfect spot for them to stretch their legs and relax. It was a beautiful day on August 14th, 1997. Raised wooden walkways led the family of 3 from the car park over the swampland to the hot springs. An area of tranquility awaited them. Surrounded by boreal forests, the pools of naturally warm water are a haven for wildlife. Many people bask in the warm pools, soaking in the beautiful surroundings. But with the natural beauty comes the danger. With the great wilderness comes the wild. Patty and the 2 children slipped into their swimming suits. Barefooted, they trotted excitedly along the wooden walkways towards the pristine waters. Kristen jumped into the pool first. She immersed herself in the water as the warmth engulfed her. Patty's son Kelly asked to walk to the next pool. Reluctantly, his mother agreed, telling Kristen to be safe in the water. Both Patty and Kelly walked a little further to the viewpoint. Pointing out the interesting plants that were encroaching on the still pools, they suddenly heard a noise, a rustling over Patty's shoulder. She turned around and was shocked to see a black bear only feet from them and the walkway. "Freeze, Mom," cried Kelly. Patty's heart thundered in her chest as she froze on the spot. The bear stared at the 2 of them, its eyes locked onto Patty's. She gasped as the bear took a step forwards. "Run, Mom," cried Kelly as the bear leapt up onto the walkway. The 2 of them sprinted up some steps to the lookout, but it was a dead end. With no time to think, Patty turned around just in time to see the bear launch itself right at her. She was knocked to the wooden floor. The 7-foot giant had her pinned down and was mauling her face. Patty screamed.
Jesus! Mauling her face!
The 7-foot giant had her pinned down and was mauling her face. Patty screamed. Kelly grabbed a tree branch and whacked the bear. Again and again, he hit the bear as
Yeah, I have insurance news to say. Wow, Jesus. If you guys haven't seen this video of this climber getting attacked by a black bear, it's fucking nuts.
Kelly grabbed a tree
Well,
branch and
you
whacked the
just saw a
bear.
little bit of
Again
it.
and again, he hit the bear as it savagely bit Patty's face over and over. At first, the bear didn't flinch, but then it paused and looked up at Kelly. He let out a cry as the bear went for him. Its 2-inch claws sliced through his torso.
Oh, God.
He gasped, unable to do anything but try and curl up into a ball. Kelly and Patty's screams had been overheard by Ray Kitchen, a 56-year-old trucker from British Columbia.
Oh, Billy. Being killed by a bear is the worst way because they're not how I've been saying, they're not predators, so they'll eat you alive. And it's not a quick death either. They'll just keep you alive while they're tearing you apart.
He had been bathing in one of the pools with his
And just to smell that, the bear breath too.
children, and now he sprinted along the wooden walkways. His feet thundered over the damp wooden slats. When he reached the lookout, he came to a sudden standstill. There, less than 6 feet away, stood a black bear with its back to him. He could see it straddling a young boy. Next to it lay the lifeless body of a woman. He yelled at the bear and, grabbing a branch from a tree, began banging on the railing.
Fuck.
The crashing sound did nothing to distract the bear. It continued mauling Kelly, not so much as flinching at the commotion behind it. Ray took a step forward, still yelling at the huge beast. He jabbed at it with the tree branch. Driving the branch into the bear's side, the bear lifted its head. It turned and looked at Ray for a split second before diving at him. The sheer force from the impact sent Ray flying through the railings and onto the wet, boggy ground below. The bear pounced on him.
Hey, Ellie. Nice readers, no boy.
Ray's screams were heard by others who came running to find out
I'm glad you're listening.
what was going on. Other tourists threw rocks, sticks, and stones at the bear, but to no avail. With the bear's focus now on Ray, Kelly was able to breathe. He had been badly injured. Deep gouges where the bear had slashed him with its claws covered his body. Bite marks scarred his face and neck. He crawled over to his mother. She moved at the sound of his voice. He held her hand. Her breathing was labored. Blood pooled around her body. Kelly told his mom that
Dude, Komodo dragons are no joke either.
everything was going to be okay. He told her that they would make it through this together. She managed to utter a few final words. She told him to look after his younger sisters. She told him she loved him. Then, with a final squeeze of his hand, she sighed her last breath. Their screams, along with those from Ray, were heard by others. Frank Headingham was sunbathing by one of the lower pools and thought the noise was from the youngsters enjoying the water. But when he heard the words help and bear, he leapt to action. He raced along the walkway towards the shouting. Ingrid Bailey was also walking along the paths when she heard the commotion. As a firefighter and first aider, she rushed to help. On the viewing platform, she found Kelly cradling his mother's head in his hands. She raced over to them and began CPR on Patty. Frank began wrapping a handkerchief around one of Kelly's open wounds, but then he heard another cry. It came from the bushes, only yards from where they were all gathered. It was Ray. He was still alive, only now his cries were quieter and less intense. The bear was still savaging him. Frank picked up a fallen branch. He began hitting the bear as it continued to attack Ray. The bear shifted its grip on Ray, lifting him into the air. It shook Ray's limp body. He was thrown around like a rag doll. The bear released its grip on Ray, leaving him crumpled on the ground. Ray was dead. When it was done, the bear turned its attention back to Kelly and his mom. From the swamps, it reached a single paw up onto the platform, clawing at Kelly's feet. Frank ran up to the bear and kicked it right in the snout. The bear immediately fell backwards. But instead of retreating into the undergrowth, it headed once more to the wooden walkways, where there were yet more tourists. The screams from the attacks had sent people running. News of a rampaging bear made its way through the park and fear spread. While Ingrid still fought to keep Patty alive, the bear continued its frenzy. Ambling along the boardwalks, the bear followed the distressed visitors. It picked up pace as the urge for another attack grew. In the panic,
Why would you be filming a bear that close? Oh my god, sometimes people in nature, like animals in the wild, are this fucking weird sometimes. And I'm sorry, I hate to say it, I hate to be that guy, but sometimes these attacks, oh my god, sometimes you just kind of deserve it. I'm sorry, I have to be that guy, but sometimes they are provoked, these animals, and so it's like you had it coming.
28-year-old research assistant Ari van der Velden slipped and fell. He rolled off the boardwalk, and before he had time to
Hey, freaky gyrations, nice for you to shaw
pick
boy.
himself up, the bear was upon him. It slashed his legs and bit into his arm. Ari felt the immense pressure of the bear's teeth. With a bite force of 800 psi, the black bear is typically an opportunistic predator and uses both its teeth and claws to
Hey, usually Komodos just bite you with a test bite, just stalk you. Lauren's only working long.
subdue its prey. Ari cried out in agony. He desperately tried to fight the
Hey,
bear
I'm
off,
sorry,
punching
I
it
have
in the
to be that
snout,
guy
pulling its
sometimes,
ears and
but, I
gouging its
mean,
eyes.
people
But the bear was
sometimes
so
have these
huge and
attacks coming.
powerful, Ari's efforts largely went unnoticed. As terrified visitors ran into the car park, Dave Webb, a 49-year-old businessman from Alaska, was just pulling in. He asked one of the fleeing people what was going on. Upon hearing that it was a bear attack, he grabbed two of his guns. He threw one to Dwayne Eggerbroten.
That is very true. Black bears do vary. It's rare
And the
for
two of them-
attacks. I'm sorry for always pausing. I'm sorry for this stream to be pausing a lot, but I'm like, this is like what I really
them
like.
headed along the boardwalks. They spotted the bear on top of Ari, who was still fighting
Oh,
for
shit.
his life. Dwayne took aim and shot
Look
the
at
bear
that.
in the back of the neck. The bear slumped to the ground. Dwayne
Fuck.
fired two more shots into the bear just to make sure that it was dead. He and Dave jumped
Yeah,
down to Ari and picked him
Exactly.
up. Emergency services arrived on the scene. Despite the best efforts of Ingrid to revive Patty, the mother of three sadly died at the viewpoint. Her young son Kelly and Ari were both taken to the hospital. They fought for their lives and incredibly survived the ordeal. Kelly spent 3 weeks in a Canadian children's hospital. He suffered broken ribs, a punctured lung, a fractured vertebrae, and multiple deep lacerations.
Damn.
As the years have passed, he is still tormented by what happened to his mother. He asks himself over and over if he could have done more to protect her. But in reality, as a 13-year-old boy, he did more than most. Without hesitating, he attacked the bear. His
Sorry.
heroic efforts had
My
the desired
anxiety's
effect
kicking
and
in.
distracted the bear, but the damage to his mother had already been done. Ray, who also lost his life during the rampage, was awarded the Star of Courage posthumously the following year. More than 500 mourners turned out at his memorial service. Even the former President Bill Clinton wrote a letter to Ray's wife. He honored the bravery of a man who saved complete strangers.
God damn. I mean, seriously, why are you filming a bear from this far away? I mean, you're just begging to be, you're just begging for that black bear to turn around and go,
resulting in his own terrifying final affliction. Nestled in the far eastern
oh, Jesus. Oh, don't become, yeah, exactly. Don't become, don't tell, oh my God, here we go.
reaches of
Here's probably Grizzly Man.
Russia is a land of wild beauty and rugged wilderness, the Kamchatka Peninsula. Here,
Yep.
the earth boils and steams with hot springs and geysers shooting steam high into the sky. It is a
I
place
think we're going Grizzly Man here. Grizzly Man story.
of raw power where the earth itself seems to be alive
Holy
and breathing.
shit, look at that
It is
volcano.
also home to an array of wildlife, from the majestic brown bear to the elusive snow leopard, where they roam the land freely in harmony with the landscape. For those who dare to venture into its depths, the Kamchatka Peninsula offers an unforgettable experience, as the beauty of nature is on full display and the wilderness of the land can be felt in every breath. Vitaly Nikolayenko was one of Russia's best-known bear researchers to date. He had dedicated
Never mind, this ain't Grizzly Man.
almost 30 years, which was approximately half of his life, to researching these majestic creatures.
God damn. Look at fuck. Look how close. Ah!
The 66-year-old was also a senior ranger in the Kronotsky Wildlife Reserve, where he constantly patrolled the wilderness to battle
Majestic.
illegal
Yeah, I know.
fishing and hunting. It was during these patrols that Vitaly followed the enormous brown bears of the Kamchatka Peninsula while documenting their social, mating, and feeding habits. In the evening, he would return to his cabin, light the kerosene lamp, and then document nearly 800 bear contacts annually. His work turned into one of the most significant records of brown bear behavior ever made. As the years passed, Vitaly plunged into repeated encounters with bears. He got very close and personal with the bears, who seemed to not mind sharing their space with him. His personal favorite was a 6-foot male bear that he had named Krasavchik, which means handsome. He was fond of Krasavchik and at times would lie next to the beast as it took a nap. In December 2003,
The size of that fucking
Vitaly
beast.
had stayed on the reserve instead of leaving his home to celebrate the holiday season. He had stayed longer than expected while finishing up his research on why some of the bears had not yet gone to their dens. Being winter, the bears were supposed to have gone into hibernation, warmly tucked into a hollow tree or under the roots of a huge tree. It was a Friday, and Vitaly was sitting by the window in his cabin with his hands wrapped
Rachel Virgin.
around a steaming cup of tea. Outside, the world was a frozen wasteland. The trees were heavy with snow as their branches bent low under
Oh my god. Not too long ago, I was up in Glacier, up in Montana. You should see the people when they run up to grizzly bears. Like when there's a grizzly. Like I saw grizzly bears, like a lot of them, especially hiking. Like, oh my god. That's a whole different ball game when you see them in the wild, like grizzlies. Like when I hear these grizzly attack stories, it scares the shit out of me. But like these people are going up to grizzly bears, like probably within, I don't know, they're probably like 30 yards, 30, 40 yards away from a grizzly bear. And I'm like, I'm actually verbally at this point going, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like yelling at these people like, hello? I'm trying to save your ass from a fucking grizzly attack, but like these people are looking at me like I'm fucking weird, and I'm like, do you not? No, it's like, then I was just like, whatever. I was like, whatever. If you get attacked, then I was like, I'm not going to save your ass.
the weight. He took a sip of his tea, savoring the warmth as it spread through his body. He felt the tension in his muscles begin to ease as a sense of calmness washed over him. He had just finished packing and was waiting for his flight out of the reserve. As he stared out at the snow-covered landscape, Vitaly felt a sense of peace. The cold and the silence of the winter seemed to soothe his soul, and for a moment, he could not help but picture the warm reception he would get from Tatiana, his wife, upon his arrival. Her laughter was music to his ears. Her voice and grace made his worries and cares fade away. He missed her. He sipped his tea, lost in thought as the winter world unfolded before him. He watched as the snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, with each one a unique and delicate creation. It was as if he was seeing the world through new eyes, a new dimension. This filled him with a sense of wonder and awe. And then he saw him. It was Krasavchik. His furry friend was headed to the half-frozen lake to quench his thirst. To kill the boredom, Vitaly
Krasavchik.
decided to follow his favorite bear down to the lake, where he was sure to capture some award-winning pictures and memories to last a lifetime. He geared up and took with him his camera, flare gun, and bear spray, just in case things got out of hand. The lake was less than a mile from his cabin, and so he was sure he would be back before his helicopter arrived. As he stepped out into the snow, he felt the air was crisp and cold with a sharpness that seemed to cut through to the bone. His breath was puffing out clouds and the landscape was eerily quiet, as if the Kamchatka Peninsula itself was holding its breath. But he was no stranger to the harsh elements of this area, so he soldiered on. The growl of his friendly bear quickly freed him from his thoughts. He tried to trudge through the snow-covered trail in order to catch up, but the snow was deep and his feet were heavy, but he was determined. He quickly put on his cross-country skis, which allowed him to effortlessly glide across the snow-covered trail. He could see the bear's paw prints still fresh in the snow and was determined to keep up with Krasovchik. He pushed himself to go faster, his muscles strained and burned with exertion at the effort of pushing himself to the limit. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones, but he did not falter. He tightened his coat around him. The trail wound its way through the trees, and he followed it cautiously with his senses heightened by the knowledge that a bear was nearby. Moments later, he saw Krasovchik. There he was in a grove, sleeping soundly. His usually brown fur was now gleaming in the winter sunlight. This was going to be the perfect picture as a reward for his turmoil in the harsh weather. Vitaly took out his camera, but taking a clear picture was impossible, as the snow-covered branches and tree trunks kept getting in his way. He then made the risky decision to get inside the grove. He took his skis and stuck them vertically in the snow, got down on all fours, and then crawled, ducking and weaving through the tight spaces as he made his way through the branches. His eyes were fixed on his friend Krasovchik and his senses alert. He could hear his heavy but rhythmic breathing as he struggled to make his way through the pouring snow. The sound was almost peaceful, a big contrast to the natural ferocity of the bear. His chest rose and fell with each inhale, and with each exhale,
Bear.
a small plume.
Actually, I've been going back and forth. Sometimes I think gorilla, but then it's like I don't know though. It's like possibly a bear could just use his brute strength, but then it's like I think a gorilla could fucking whoop a bear. I genuinely think we would be surprised on how much of an ass whooping a gorilla could give a fucking bear.
Plume of steam
Maybe.
escaped
But then again, a bear could get up on his back, like if it was like a giant grizzly or like a polar bear, maybe polar bear and gorilla. Polar bear would fucking. I bet a polar bear would fucking wreck house on a fucking gorilla. Oh, would I rather fight? Oh shit.
from his nostrils, dissipating into the chilly air. It was a sight that melted Vitaly's heart. At about 3 meters from the sleeping bear, Vitaly took out his camera, ready to capture the beautiful scene.
I would fight Gorilla Gwen instead of bear or gorilla. I would. Oh, I'd rather fight Gorilla Gwen.
For his memory book, as he had done numerous times before. On Saturday, the following day, the helicopter arrived, ready to airlift Vitaly out of the reserve for his holiday. The pilot found packed bags and a cold cup of tea by the cabin's window, but Vitaly was nowhere to be seen. He, without hesitation, called the search and rescue team, which arrived promptly and began searching. They followed Vitaly's ski trail, and just about a mile from the cabin, they found his skis at the entrance of the grove, placed vertically in the snow, just as he had done the day before. The rescue team then followed Vitaly's tracks into the grove, and just about 3 meters in, there he was. Vitaly's body lay there motionless. His bear spray can was empty, which led the rescue team to believe that he had used it to try to save his life. In the snow, they could see Krasovchik's tracks where he leapt to attack Vitaly. It seemed that the spray hadn't deterred the bear from attacking him. On his right side lay the unfired flare gun, which was half eaten. His camera lay inches away from his body. It was bloody and broken. The search and rescue team brought his lifeless body back from the wilderness for goodbyes and burial from his family. Despite his numerous research journals, Vitaly's proactive approach of monitoring bears was broadly criticized by the conservation movement.
Oh God, Kingpin. Oh my God. Oh. Bluff charge the freaking helicopter? Holy hell.
Community, who argued that he went against the consensual passive method of ethology. In his defense, Vitaly claimed that he never underestimated the tenacity of the bears, but this wasn't how his critics saw it. As to them, his death seemed to be a confirmation of their worries. In addition, In excess of over 20 bears that had become habituated in the presence of Vitaly were easy targets for poachers and were killed just before and shortly after his death. As it is with nature, wild animals are just that, wild. One shouldn't get too comfortable when approaching wildlife, as their wild traits are intrinsically imprinted in their genetics and they can snap at any time, leaving behind a lifeless body. For Vitaly, this was a lesson learned a bit too late, but his journals shall forever be a constant reminder of his contribution to the science and academic community. He was a great loss to both man and nature, and the very animal he based his life around ultimately led to his final affliction.
Jesus. I'm gonna pause it on the bear ones because I wanna listen to. I wanna pause it on the animal attack ones for a second, and change it over to some. We're gonna listen to. Let's listen to. Is it Mr. Ballin? Let's watch this. Watch this one. It's what this man did will haunt you, and it says for mature audiences, so only.
Today's
So that's what we're gonna listen to. There we go.
story is brutal. If you get to the end, it's the kind of story that's going to leave a mark on you. So viewer discretion is advised.
Wow. Okay. Haven't seen this video. So here we go.
But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do at home and virtually.
Oh shit.
On the far west side of Ohio lies a small town called Wilshire. In 1989, there were less than 600 people that called this place their home, and virtually
Yes. Lauren's only working lung. I've heard that story about that polar bear on Joe Rogan. From Joe Rogan's podcast. That's fucking nuts.
all of them were middle-class Americans. Most of them were farmers or factory workers, or they worked in one of the very few small businesses in town. While Wilshire was certainly not the most exciting place to live, it did have a reputation for being a nice place to raise a family. It was a tight community of people that looked out for one another. One family that was part of the Wilshire community in 1989 was the Rogers family. They consisted of the parents, Hal and Joan. Joan went by Joe, and they were both 36 years old, and they had two daughters, Michelle, who was 17, and Christy, who was 14. Hal and Joe had met in high school. Joe was very outgoing and popular, and Hal was reserved and quiet. But despite their extreme differences, they actually complemented each other very nicely, and they seemed to bring out the best in the other. By their senior year, Joe had become pregnant with Michelle, and so after graduation, the teen couple got married and they moved into a dairy farm to start their life together. And a few years after that, Christy was born and their family was complete. Over the years, Hal and Joe worked extremely hard on their farm, but it just wasn't enough to pay the bills. So to make ends meet, Joe had to get a second job working nights at a factory where she drove a forklift and worked the assembly line. While life was certainly not very easy for the Rogers family, they always found a way to stay positive and upbeat. The girls were very popular in school and made friends easily, and when they were home, they were always goofing around with the farm animals that they loved. As for the parents, they always carved out time every week where just the two of them could sneak off and get breakfast or dinner together. But their simple, happy way of life would be shattered later that year when it was discovered that Hal's brother, John, who actually lived with them in a trailer on their farm property, had secretly been a assaulting Michelle for the past 3 years. Michelle hadn't told anyone because John had threatened to kill her, but when inappropriate pictures of her turned up inside of his trailer, his horrible secret was out. John went to jail for a very long time, but the damage he left behind was unbelievable. Michelle couldn't even talk.
Yeah, Mr. Ballin, he's a fucking badass Navy SEAL. I believe he took a grenade too to save his other comrades, and that's why he's out of the service. That's why he's out of service and now doing this shit, I believe. If I remember correctly, he took took a grenade blast or something like that. He said in one of his videos here.
Talk about what happened to her.
I mean, not in one. He explained it, and I forgot what video it was, but yeah, he explained it. Like he'd took a grenade or something like that.
Meanwhile, Hal, her father, was just beside himself. He could not believe that right under his nose, someone was harming his daughter, and that it was his own brother doing it. He wanted to kill his brother, but his brother was in custody, so he couldn't. And making this situation even more painful, Hal and John's mother wound up siding with John. She believed Michelle was lying and had set John up, and she began saying this publicly, and it spread all throughout town. It was just an absolute tragedy through and through, and Hal and Joe had no idea how they were going to recover from it. That's when the idea of a vacation came up. Take the kids away from this farm, away from this drama, let them be kids again, let them be stress-free, even for a couple of days. It will do them an enormous amount of good. And so Hal decided he would actually stay back at the farm and just Joe and the girls would go. It would be a girls' trip. When Joe told her daughters, they were ecstatic. They had never been on a vacation before, and in fact, neither had Joe. Joe told the girls that they needed to plan out this trip, pick the place they wanted to go, plan out the itinerary, but keep in mind they had to drive wherever this vacation was going to be, and their budget was going to be fairly tight. The girls decided on Florida, and for weeks they meticulously planned their itinerary, trying to maximize sightseeing opportunities both on the road trip and also at their destination. Finally, on May 26, 1989, the day had come for the girls to head out on their journey. They said bye to Hal, and then they loaded up into the light blue family sedan, and they were on their way. The trio drove south for about 8 hours on I-75 through Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way to Georgia, which was their halfway point. They found a motel, they crashed there for the night, and then the next morning they got up early and they finished their trip all the way into Florida. And for the next couple of days, they followed their itinerary and went to amusement parks and zoos and other attractions all over the Sunshine State. They were really having a great time. In fact, on May 29th, Joe sent a postcard to Hal that she kind of jokingly said, "The girls are dragging me all over the state. All I want to do is relax." But the tone of the message was really that she and her kids were having a wonderful time. On June 1st, the girls left Orlando, Florida, and made their way to Tampa, Florida, where they planned to go to one more amusement park before they had to turn around and head back to Ohio. Hal had been told they would be back on June 3rd. But when June 3rd came and went and the girls did not show up in Ohio, Hal was not immediately concerned. Hal was very restrained and composed. He almost never showed any emotion. So when things didn't go to plan, he didn't panic. He just assumed that Joe and the girls had decided to stay a little bit longer. They had each other and they would be fine and he would see them in a couple of days. But over the next couple of days, the girls did not show up and they never communicated with Hal. And so on June 6th, Hal went to the police and he reported his family missing. The police investigation was slow at first because there was a general belief that these women had decided to just stay out longer because they didn't want to come back to this dairy farm that now was home to a lot of terrible memories after this revelation about their uncle. But 2 days after Hal went to police, everything changed. That morning, a motel maid in Tampa, Florida, noticed something odd about room 251. She had cleaned it earlier in the week and had made the beds and put the towels up and moved the occupants' luggage onto chairs and tables so it was nice and neat. And now she was coming back to clean it about a week later, and the room still looked exactly the way it did when she had cleaned it. The beds were still made, the towels hadn't been touched, and the luggage was positioned around the room just as she had set it up. So she tells her manager, who thought it was strange enough that he called the police and told them about it. The police in Tampa went out to this motel and they discovered that room 251 was registered to missing people, Joan Rogers and her two daughters, Michelle and Christy. The motel manager told police that the trio had checked in on June 1st, but after that, no one had seen them. The police searched their room and they found their camera, and the final two pictures that had been taken were taken inside this motel room. One was of Michelle crouching down, rummaging through her suitcase, looking like she's getting ready to go out somewhere, and the other was taken from inside their room, looking out over their balcony out towards Tampa Bay as the sun was beginning to set. The rest of the search of the room did not turn up any significant evidence. All they knew was the women were not there. And so using the motel as a center point, they began searching the area, and pretty quickly they found Joe's car parked a mile away from the motel near a public boat ramp. Joe and her daughters were nowhere to be found, and initially there was nothing inside or outside the car to indicate where they might have gone. But upon closer inspection, they found two brochures sitting on the floor of the car, and on each of them was some handwriting. The first brochure had a note that was clearly written by Joe, and it was directions to the boat ramp where the car was parked. On the other brochure, the other note, the handwriting was not Joe's or her daughter's. It was some other person's handwriting, and that one was directions to the motel where Joe and her daughters were staying. The police had no idea who wrote this second note, so they started by focusing on Joe's note, the directions to this boat ramp. Specifically, they were looking at the last couple of words in her note, where she wrote,
Hey, outdoor loser, nice for you to stop by.
blue with white. And investigators assumed what this meant was when she got to this boat ramp using these directions, she needed to look out for something that was blue and white. And what would be blue and white at a boat ramp? Boats. And that's when the police made a terrible connection. 4 days earlier, the Coast Guard had made a discovery out in the bay about 25 miles away from where Joe's car had been found. At the time, no one was connecting this discovery to the three missing women from Ohio because no one in Tampa knew about the three missing women from Ohio. But now that they did know about them, the connection was obvious. While it would take 3 years to finally put all the pieces together, the police would eventually figure out what happened to Joe, Michelle, and Christy. On the morning of June 1st, they got in their car and they left Orlando and made their way to Tampa. When they got to Tampa, they couldn't find their motel. So Joe pulled over on the side of the road and she got out her brochure that had a map of the area. And as she's studying her map, trying to figure out where she is, a man approaches the car. He was white, he was in his 30s, he was average height, average build, he had blonde hair and a mustache, and was just overall kind of unremarkable and unthreatening. And so he went up to the driver's side window, and Joe rolled her window down, and he said to her, are you guys lost? I see your Ohio license plates and you're pulled over here. I'm from the area. Can I point you in the right direction? And Joe would say, actually, yeah, we're lost. We can't find our motel. Do you know where this motel is? And this guy would say, oh yeah, I know where that is. Here, give me that brochure and I'll write the directions down for you. So Joe hands the brochure up to him and a pen, and he writes down directions to the motel they're staying in. And then after he gives it back to her, Joe thanks him and he says, hey, would you guys want to come out on my boat tonight and watch the sunset out on the water? It's beautiful. And Joe and her daughters thought, what? This guy's friendly. He's helpful. He seems pretty nice. Sure, we'd love to go with you. And so this guy says, great, I can't wait to see you. And he proceeds to give Joe directions of how to get to this public boat ramp where his boat is. And so she takes notes on the other brochure as he's talking. And then he tells her also, when you get there tonight, look out for my boat. It's blue and white. And so she makes the note blue with white. And after that, she thanked the man not only for giving them directions, but for his generosity to allow them to come out on his boat with him that night. And as he walked back towards his car, Joe and her girls followed his directions to their motel. They got there around 12:30 p.m. They checked in. And then after that, it's not really clear how they spent their afternoon. Whether they went to the beach or a park or something like that, we don't know. But at 7:30 p.m., they were spotted leaving the motel restaurant. And then after that, they went up to their room for a little while to get ready for their trip out on this boat with their new friend. And as they were getting ready, putting their bathing suits on and shorts and jackets, Joe or Christy got out the camera and they took a picture of Michelle as she was crouched down getting ready. And they also took a picture of their view from the balcony out over the bay as the sun was starting to go down. After they were all finally ready, they put everything away in their room, they headed down to their car, and Joe drove them the mile over to the boat ramp where they parked. They saw the blue and white boat and their friend was on it, waving to them. And then sometime between 8:30 and 9 p.m. that night, the women boarded the boat and the man took them out into the middle of the bay. Exactly what happened out on that boat, out on the water, is not entirely clear. But what we do know for sure is that at some point, their new acquaintance turned on them. And he almost definitely assaulted all three of them. And then after he was done, he tied them all up. He tied their ankles together and he tied their arms together behind their back. And then he put a strip of duct tape over all of their mouths, but he kept their eyes open. He wanted them to see what he was going to do. And then he went into his boat and he pulled out 3 30-pound cinder blocks and he set them on the deck in front of the 3 women so they could see what he had. And then he got 3 long stretches of rope and he tied one end of each of these pieces of rope to each of the cinder blocks. And after each cinder block was securely fastened on the end of these long lines of rope, he would
Oh, dear God.
tie a noose on the other end of each of these lines. So there were 3 nooses and 3 cinder blocks. Then he grabbed one of the women, he stood them up, he put a noose over her neck, he tightened it down, he walked her over to the edge, and he pushed her off along with her cinder block. And so as she is struggling to stay above the water, her loved ones are in full view of her. They're watching this happen. And then at some point, she sunk below the water and didn't come up again. At that point, the man grabbed another woman, stood her up, put a noose on her neck, tightened it, and then brought her to the edge, pushed her in the water along with her cinder block. And just like before,
Lauren is a definite Jack the Ripper type.
or the last woman on board the ship had to watch as her loved one struggled and eventually sunk below the surface. And then at that point, the man grabbed the last woman, he stood her up, put a noose on her neck, tightened it, and then pushed her off the edge along with the cinder block. And at some point, she too sunk below the surface and did not come up again. And at this point, the man just turned around and drove back to shore like nothing had ever happened. On June 4th, so 3 days after the 3 women were killed, because of decomposition, their bodies had bloated and they floated to the surface. The Coast Guard was alerted to their position. They pulled them out of the water, but because of their extreme decomposition at this point, because of the warm water, they weren't able to ID them. During their autopsy, they found water in each of their lungs, which confirmed they were alive when they were thrown in the water. A few days later, when Joe's car and those notes inside of the car were located near the boat ramp, and the police began to speculate that she, along with her daughters, must have boarded a boat before they disappeared, that was when they made the connection that unfortunately these 3 missing women are probably the 3 unidentified bodies that had been found in the bay a few days earlier. So on the day they make this connection, the police call Hal back in Ohio and they request the dental records of his wife and his daughters. And those records would confirm his worst nightmare. His entire family was gone. The man who killed his family was a guy named Oba Chandler, who was a suspected serial killer who liked to brag about his date with 3 women. In 1994, he was found guilty of murdering all 3 of the Rogers women, but he never took responsibility, nor did he show any remorse. For nearly 2 decades, Oba sat on death row, and not once did he get a visit from a friend or a family member. Nobody wanted to see this guy. And then finally, a little after 4 p.m.
Good. Fuck that guy.
on November 7th, Oba sat on death row, and not once did he get a visit from a friend or a family member. Nobody wanted to see this guy. And then finally, a little after 4 p.m. on November 17th, 2011, so roughly 22 years after Oba had murdered the Rogers women, he was led into the execution chamber inside of Florida State Prison. After he was strapped down to the gurney, a curtain was slid aside so the witnesses of the execution could see him. And then at 4:08 p.m., Hal Rogers watched calmly from the front row as the man who ruined his life, Oba Chandler, was put to death by lethal injection. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret...
Oh, my God. I'm going to do another one. Keep it going. I have another one I don't want to do.
in today's
Oh, shit. We're going to listen to this true story that inspired Candyman, the movie Candyman. I was actually listening to it a little bit beforehand, and it's pretty fucking good. So, here we go.
One day in early January of 1987, a very strange 52-year-old woman named Ruthie Mae McCoy walked out of her 11th floor apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Today was the day that Ruthie was going to be doing one of her self-appointed public duties. Ruthie was quite tall, and this particular day, she had on 2 pairs of pants with a dress over them. She also had her favorite long stick she was carrying. And as Ruthie marched down the hallway, she began jiggling each of her neighbors' doorknobs to see if they were unlocked. And then in between each doorknob check, she would suddenly stop and wave her stick around like it was a sword, and she was fighting off some unseen attacker. And so after Ruth...
So this was, I think, God damn it, I think, yeah, Mr. Ballin explains it.
Nightmare fuel. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's house and toast all of their bread.
I'm gonna let Mr. Ballin explain what we're talking about here.
And then leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Oh, God damn it.
Today's story inspired a popular horror movie, and when you get to the reveal in this story, you'll understand why. It is literal nightmare fuel. But before we get into a very strange 52-year-old woman named Ruthie Mae McCoy walked out of her 11th floor apartment in Chicago, Illinois.
I should have just kept it going. I'm sorry, guys.
Today was the day that Ruthie was going to be doing one of her self-appointed public duties. Ruthie was quite tall, and this particular day, she had on 2 pairs of pants with a dress over them. She also had her favorite long stick she was carrying. And as Ruthie marched down the hallway, she began jiggling each of her neighbors' doorknobs to see if they were unlocked. And then in between each doorknob check, she would suddenly stop and wave her stick around like it was a sword, and she was fighting off some unseen attacker. And so after Ruthie had checked 4 doors in a row that were all locked, she reached the 5th door, and when she tried the doorknob, it was unlocked. And so without any hesitation, Ruthie pushed the door open, she stepped inside and began yelling, "Hey, look at me, I'm inside of your apartment!" And the woman who lived in this 5th apartment was in her kitchen making dinner at the time, and when she looked up and saw Ruthie barging into her apartment, she wasn't scared. She was just totally annoyed. She rolled her eyes and then began yelling at Ruthie to get out now. But, as always, Ruthie didn't listen. And before long, Ruthie had moved from the doorframe into the apartment, into the kitchen, where she was waving her stick around wildly and berating this young woman for leaving her front door unlocked in this very dangerous apartment building. The young woman yelled at Ruthie a few more times to try to get her to just leave, but Ruthie didn't budge, and so eventually this young woman picked up the phone and called 911. It would turn out the 15-story apartment building that Ruthie and this young woman and all of their neighbors lived in was indeed a very dangerous place to leave your front door unlocked. In fact, at the time, in the late 1980s, this particular apartment building was considered to be one of the most dangerous places in all of Chicago, with a murder occurring there nearly every week. Gangs basically ruled the building, which was totally falling apart and
That's crazy. Every week.
Gangs basically ruled the building, which was totally falling apart and totally decrepit, and had these long, dark hallways that thieves and killers could hide in. And so Ruthie wasn't wrong in trying to get her neighbors to keep their doors.
Whoa, that's a real hallway. Wow. I said like a jail.
Hide in. And so Ruthie wasn't wrong in trying to get her neighbors to keep their doors locked, but her very hands-on approach to delivering this message was never met with appreciation from the people who lived on her floor. Instead, her neighbors viewed Ruthie as potentially more hazardous than anything Ruthie was trying to protect them from. However, in reality, Ruthie was not a threat to her neighbors. She was just totally mentally unstable and basically afraid of everything. For example, whenever Ruthie got mail, she would just assume that it was terrible news and most likely about someone coming to take all of her money. And when Ruthie was out in public, which was quite rare, she was so scared of strangers that whenever she passed them, she would just yell out obscenities at them to keep them away. And then also when Ruthie was in public, she never ate because she was afraid strangers were going to literally run up and take her food. So, back inside of this fifth apartment that Ruthie has barged into, Ruthie was busy berating this young woman about her unlocked door when the police did finally show up and they dragged Ruthie out of the apartment into the hall. The police by this point knew Ruthie really, really well, and they were not about to arrest her. They knew she was harmless, but just kind of out of her mind. And so, like they always did in this situation, they told Ruthie to leave her neighbors alone and just go back into your apartment and mind your own business. And Ruthie usually would mutter something under her breath about needing to increase the security in this building, but she would eventually do as she was told and she would go back home. And that was basically Ruthie's life in a nutshell. Constant fear and paranoia from living in this totally dangerous apartment building, exacerbated tenfold by her very poor mental health. But Ruthie was not content with her life. She, like virtually everybody else in this high-rise apartment building, wanted to get out and live somewhere else and have a better life. But Ruthie, like virtually everybody else living in this high-rise apartment building, did not have enough money, and so she was trapped there. But then, in February of 1987, so 1 month after busting into that woman's apartment, Ruthie got incredible news. She had recently begun going to a day program for psychiatric care at a local hospital, and the staff there had really taken a liking to her, and they were going above and beyond trying to help Ruthie kind of get her life together beyond just her mental health. And so one of the things they were doing with her was helping her apply for various government programs like disability payments. And so that month, in February, Ruthie found out that the application they had sent off for her was approved, and so Ruthie was entitled to disability payments, which meant right away she would get a check for $2,000, and then every month going forward indefinitely she would get a payment. It wouldn't be $2,000, but it would be a lot of money. Ruthie was beside herself. She could not believe her luck. And she now knew that with this money, she would finally be able to move out of that terrible apartment.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Ruthie sounds like a something else.
Even before the money began coming into Ruthie, she was already looking for a new place to live. And as she did this, all she could think about were her two beloved grandchildren, a little boy and a little girl. They were the only people in the world, it seemed, to Ruthie that really accepted her and just loved her unconditionally. And so whenever Ruthie would go visit her grandkids, the three of them would sit on the ground and just play together for hours and hours. But to that point, Ruthie's grandkids had not been allowed to visit Ruthie at her apartment because it was too dangerous. But now that Ruthie was going to move into someplace much, much safer, she knew that was going to change. She was going to see her grandkids so much more often. And this made Ruthie so happy. And this newfound happiness inside of Ruthie really motivated her to start looking at other aspects of her life and see if she could improve them. And so, as Ruthie is doing this new apartment search, she began taking classes to finally get her high school degree. She began picking up these old art projects she had kind of blown off. And also, most importantly to this story, she really began leaning into her religion, something she had not been doing for a long time. Specifically, she began tuning in to these very animated preachers that she would find on TV. And when she really liked one of them, she would write them a letter, and in this letter, she would praise them for their sermons and how incredible they were, and she would ask them to bless her with miracles. And these miracles were often just centered on her health. She wanted to look and feel young again. And some of these TV preachers, who were actually just running scams, would write back to Ruthie and say, "Of course we can bless you with your miracles, but first, send us some money." And so, when Ruthie's disability
of
payments
course.
began coming in, even though she needed to save every penny to be able to afford moving out to start this beautiful new life with her grandkids, she still found a way to set aside some of that money and sent it off to these TV preachers. And soon, these preachers were sending things back to Ruthie. Things like a blessed piece of wood for her to sleep on, or bottles of water said to be from the holy river Jordan. These spiritual items were often accompanied with a letter from these preachers telling Ruthie that in order for them to fulfill her miracles request, she would need to keep these spiritual items close to her and also send us some more money. And so Ruthie did as she was told, and after sending off all this money, she would excitedly wait inside of her apartment
This is gonna get crazy.
for her miracles to come true. And while she waited, she began tacking up all these newspaper articles all over her apartment of these people who miracles had happened to them, that supposedly God had fixed their teeth or eradicated a tumor in their brain or cured them of cancer. And in all of these stories, the person who the miracle happened to would describe looking in the mirror one day and just looking different. And that was the moment they knew that this miracle had occurred. And so Ruthie, believing this was bound to happen to her any day because she was working with these TV preachers, began going to her bathroom mirror all the time and just looking at herself, looking for some visible change in her appearance that would indicate one of her miracles had come true. But by April 22nd, so roughly a month after finding out she was going to be receiving these payments, and this was about 2 weeks before she was set to actually move out into her new place, Ruthie had still not seen any sign in the mirror that she had changed, and so she believed these miracles had not happened yet. But something else had begun happening when Ruthie was in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror. And that was, she would hear somewhere off in the distance the sound of someone talking to her. It was almost like they were whispering to her, but she couldn't quite tell what they were saying. Now, Ruthie wanted to believe that these disembodied voices had something to do with her miracles coming to fruition, but Ruthie was naturally a very paranoid and scared person, and so she couldn't help but be a little bit scared of these voices. And so that afternoon, when Ruthie was on the bus headed back home after a doctor's appointment, she told a friend on the bus about these strange whispers she was hearing, and Ruthie would also say that she felt like these whispers meant that somebody was out to get her. Now, Ruthie's friend knew Ruthie really well, and this just wasn't unusual behavior for Ruthie. Ruthie routinely thought people were out to get her, and she talked about hearing voices before in the past. And so this friend told Ruthie that, you really should tell someone about this, but deep down, this friend was not that concerned. This was kind of normal Ruthie behavior, and this couldn't be a big deal. However, it would turn out to be a huge deal.
Oh, jeez.
Today's video
Yeah, Ruthie was a schizo.
is sponsored by
No. Okay. There's a walrus. I'm gonna fast forward through this ad. Oh, here we go.
That night, around 8:45 p.m., when Ruthie was back home at her apartment, she called 911. And when the dispatcher answered her call, Ruthie was in a total panic, and she was talking about something to do with the cabinets and with her bathroom and how her neighbors wanted to use her bathroom, and the dispatcher just did not understand, and they tried to ask Ruthie some clarifying questions, but Ruthie just could not put together a coherent sentence. And so the dispatcher told Ruthie that they would send police over right away, and then afterwards the dispatcher would put out to the officers in the area that, hey, Ruthie McCoy seems to be having some sort of argument with her neighbors over cabinets. I don't really know, but someone needs to go check it out. And when the officers got that call, they were not quick to respond. They knew Ruthie. They knew that this was likely nonsense. But 15 minutes after Ruthie called 911, 911 got another call from somebody else inside of Ruthie's apartment building, and they were calling to report hearing loud noises coming from inside of Ruthie's apartment.
Jesus.
And so at this, the police did act quickly. They rushed over to the apartment building. They went to the 11th floor. They went to Ruthie's door and they began pounding on her door because it was locked. But Ruthie didn't come to the door and it was totally silent inside of her apartment. And so at some point, the police called back to dispatch and asked them to call Ruthie on the phone she
Hey, day Converse, the dark.
had just used 15 minutes earlier to call 911. And so these police officers are standing right outside of Ruthie's door and they're listening to the sound of Ruthie's phone ringing inside of her house, but Ruthie didn't answer it. And again, the apartment stayed totally quiet. And so the responding officers turned around and began walking down the hall and knocking on other people's doors and began asking them, hey, did you hear any loud sounds coming out of Ruthie's apartment? And everybody said no. And so the police eventually just kind of gave up and left, despite not seeing Ruthie, not talking to Ruthie, not seeing what's going on inside of her apartment. The next day, when one of Ruthie's friends on her floor noticed that Ruthie had not come out of her apartment all day, and when she knocked on the door, Ruthie didn't answer, this friend called the police. The police came out again, they knocked on Ruthie's door, and after a while, when she didn't answer, the police again just left. Ruthie's friend, who had called the police, was furious that the police were not taking this seriously, and so she wound up contacting maintenance of the building, and a janitor went up to the 11th floor, went to Ruthie's door, drilled through the lock, and pushed her door open. The janitor immediately yelled out for Ruthie, but there was no response, and so he stepped inside and kind of looked around, and right away he was struck by two things. One, it was a total mess inside of her apartment. There were all these religious books and pamphlets all over the ground, but as messy as the apartment looked, it also seemed weirdly empty. Like there was no TV, there was really no furniture or anywhere to sit. It was almost like this apartment had been half moved out, and then whoever was moving it out had just kind of stopped. The janitor started to get a really bad feeling about being inside of this apartment, but he mustered the courage to walk a little farther into the apartment to look into the bedroom. And when he turned the corner and looked into that bedroom, he froze, because there on the ground was Ruthie McCoy. She was lying on the ground in a pool of her own blood. She was dead. The police were called, they came out, they walked around her apartment, and they concluded that this was kind of an open and shut case. Ruthie must have opened her door for the wrong person who came inside and killed her. Remember, this
Jesus.
apartment building saw one murder nearly every week, so this really was kind of routine. And just a couple of days later, the police would arrest a 19-year-old living in this apartment building named Edward Turner because he was found to be in possession of Ruthie's TV. Edward did not admit to doing anything, but the police assumed that, he must have tried to rob Ruthie, and in the course of this robbery, perhaps Ruthie had tried to fight back, at which point Edward had overpowered her and killed her. But the police did suspect that there was at least one other person involved in Ruthie's murder, so they did keep investigating. And then in June, so about a month and a half after Edward was arrested, the police began hearing this very disturbing rumor about the building where Ruthie had lived. At first, the police completely dismissed it because it sounded totally made up. But when it kept coming up over and over again, whenever they interviewed anybody in this building about Ruthie's murder, the police finally decided they had to at least look into it in order to confirm that it was not true. However, when the police looked into this rumor, they would discover that it was true, and it
Oh, Jesus.
absolutely played a role in Ruthie's murder. Back on the night of April 22nd, 1987, so the night that Ruthie called 911 in a panic, saying something about her cabinets and her neighbors and her bathroom, well, what had really happened is Ruth was home around 8:45 when she heard this loud banging sound coming from her bathroom. And then before she could go over and inspect the bathroom, her bathroom door flung open, and standing in the doorway was this dark, tall figure who just suddenly took off running through her apartment, out her front door, out into the hallway. Ruthie was so startled she had no idea what to make of it. She knew that sometimes she saw things that weren't real, and so she likely struggled to figure out, did that really happen? Am I dreaming? Am I hallucinating? What's going on? And so with all these thoughts going through her head, she called 911 to get help, but she couldn't quite describe what had even happened. And so that's why she began rambling about how her neighbors wanted to use her bathroom and the cabinets were somehow involved. It was all very confusing. And so the dispatcher obviously didn't understand what was going on, but they told Ruthie, okay, I'll pass this along and the police will be out soon. And so as Ruthie is waiting for the police to show up, she wanders over to the bathroom where this dark figure has appeared, and she walks inside and she looks at where her mirror had been above her sink. The mirror that she had spent so many hours looking into, hoping for signs of a miracle, and the mirror was gone. And in its place was this big dark hole on the wall, almost like an entrance to a dark tunnel. And as Ruthie is staring at this void, she sees these two dark hands emerge from underneath that come out of the hole and grip onto her sink. And then eyes pop up and a man's head pops up, and then he uses his arms, which are clutched onto the sink, to pull himself up and out of the hole in her wall, where he plopped down on the bathroom floor and then stood up and stared at Ruthie. And then everything after that point would have happened really fast.
You can fuck off.
Ruthie likely began screaming, at which point the first man, the dark figure that had run out into the hallway and prompted Ruthie to call 911, he must have heard Ruthie screaming, and so he...
Yeah, I've heard that too, Road Scholar, that mirrors are supposed to be portals or something like that.
Came running back in through the front door into Ruthie's apartment with a jacket over his head, and then at some point he or the other man who had come out of the hole in the wall yelled at Ruthie.
Dacon vs. the Dark. This is about the true story that inspired the movie Candyman.
To get down on the ground. Maybe she didn't.
So this, like, schizophrenic lady would go around into this tall apartment building, like one of the most dangerous, like there was like murders like every week, and she would like check like each person's like doors and stuff, and then like she would, like, if there was like a door open, she would like run into the house and like berate the person on like, you're in like in a dangerous area or something like that, and why you should have your doors locked and shit. And everyone like knew of her and stuff, but yeah, and she ended up getting killed, and now we're here.
Comply, maybe she did, but after that, 4 gunshots rang out. All 4 shots hit Ruthie. However, these 4 shots did not kill Ruthie right away. And so Ruthie was very alive as these 2 men stole her TV, they stole her rocking chair and some other things, and Ruthie was almost certainly still alive when the police did finally show up and began knocking on her door and calling her phone, but she was bleeding to death. She couldn't move, she couldn't make a sound, but the police just abandoned her, at which point she did die. It would turn out that disturbing rumor that the police heard about this apartment building was that apparently people in this building had learned that you could pull off your mirror inside of your bathroom and literally climb into the walls. And from that point, you could basically wander all over this building and then punch other people's mirrors in their bathrooms in, and then climb through that hole and do whatever you wanted to the people inside of that apartment. And so when Ruthie began hearing those whispers when she was in her bathroom looking at the mirror hoping for a miracle, those were the sounds of thieves and killers and criminals slinking about her wall. Detectives speculated that the 2 men who killed Ruthie likely found out about her disability payments and decided to rob her. However, the two men that police arrested, the 19-year-old Edward Turner, who was found in possession of her TV, and this other man who was also arrested, were ultimately acquitted because there were so many people crawling through the walls all day and night inside of this building that there was no way to prove that those two were the ones who actually went in and killed Ruthie. To this day, no one else has ever been charged with Ruthie's murder. What happened to Ruthie became the basis for the very popular horror movie called The Candyman, starring Tony Todd.
Great movie, by the way.
So,
anyways, we gotta change it. Jesus, funny. Yeah, I love Tony Todd. He has a good voice. Let's do. Where did that one? To that one. To that one. Let's do. Let's do this one. It's another Mr. Ballin. It's in my playlist that I have for today. It's called His Victims Had to Play His Evil Game. And the thumbnail is a guy in a forest with an axe. So
the final
and it says viewer discretion is advised. So it's gonna be another good one. So buckle up. There you go. Gonna be a good one. There you go. Hey, Leah. Nice for you to stop by. Welcome.
confession at the end of this video is genuinely horrifying. Viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of these strange...
And I'm glad everyone is liking my different style of stream so far. I really like it. I really enjoy it.
dark and mysterious delivered in story format, and you
I love all this dark, exactly like how Mr. Ballin said it. Dark, mysterious, love it. I genuinely do.
come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please secretly teach the like button's parrot to screech obscenities every time the like button is on a work call. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. On September 12, 1982, 2 off-duty Alaska police officers were off hunting in a very remote section of Alaska about 20 miles away from Anchorage. The only way to get out to this area was by plane or by boat, and so generally speaking, the only people that came into this area were big-time hunters. After a long day, the 2 men realized it was starting to get dark and they were still deep in the woods, and so they decided it was time to turn around and start heading back to camp. The journey through the woods was challenging, and so the men walked down to the nearby Kinnick River and walked across an exposed sandbar. And as they walked, they noticed up ahead there was a boot sticking out of the sand. And as they got closer, they realized it wasn't just a boot. There was also a human leg bone still in the boot. Being police officers, they knew the importance of not disturbing a potential crime scene, and so instead they marked on the map where they were, they left the area, and they reported the body to their department. The following day, crime scene technicians came out to that remote area and they very carefully unearthed the remains, which still had women's clothing on them. And then afterwards, they began searching for evidence in the area, and eventually they discovered a single shell casing that was a .223 caliber round, which is a common caliber for hunting rifles. The remains were sent back to the lab for an autopsy, and it was revealed this person was a female and she had most likely died at least 6 months earlier. And she had almost certainly been the victim of a homicide because she had died from 3 gunshot wounds. Also during the autopsy, it was discovered that there were no bullet holes on any of her clothing, and so it appeared that she had been shot without her clothes on, and then her killer presumably redressed her. Also, they found a hospital bandage wrapped up in her clothing that appeared to have been wrapped around her head, leading some to speculate that she had been blindfolded before she was shot.
Jesus.
A couple of weeks after the autopsy, dental records came back and they identified the body as belonging to 23-year-old Sherry Morrow. Sherry was an exotic dancer from Anchorage who had been reported missing 10 months earlier. In her missing persons report, it was stated that the last thing she told her friends was she had been offered $300 to have pictures taken of her by a professional photographer, and she was going to meet this man right before she disappeared. While police were fairly certain that Sherry's killer was this so-called photographer, they had no evidence that would allow them to search for this person. They had nothing. All they had was this shell casing that was commonly used amongst hunters. And there's lots of hunters in Alaska. So the police reported the finding of Sherry's body to the media in hopes that when they put that out to the world, that someone from the public would reach out with more information. During the police's press conference, one of the reporters asked them, do you think Sherry's death is connected to the other unsolved deaths in that part of Alaska? What they were referencing was 2 years earlier, 2 other women's bodies had been discovered in that rough area where Sherry had been found. One of the women was so badly decomposed there was no way to identify her. However, it was revealed she was probably in her late teens or early 20s. The other woman was able to be identified. It was 24-year-old Joanne Messina, who was an exotic dancer from Anchorage. But there was virtually no evidence at either of the 2 women's grave sites, and so their deaths remained a mystery. Publicly, at this press conference, the police told reporters that they did not believe Sherry's death was connected to those 2 other women. But privately, some officers had their suspicions. Not only had these 3 women met similar fates in a similar area, but over the past couple of years, there had been a significant increase in missing people out of Anchorage, Alaska. And most of these missing people were young women that were either exotic dancers or prostitutes. This convinced many officers that they were dealing with a serial killer, but there just wasn't any evidence to actually prove it, so they couldn't come out and say it publicly. Over the following year, no new information came out about Sherry Morrow or the other 2 deceased women that had been found in that same area.
I'm not sure Lauren's only working long. This is my first time hearing this.
And so all 3 of their cases just continued to languish. Meanwhile, more and more exotic dancers and prostitutes were going missing out of Anchorage, and no one knew why. Then, on June 13th, 1983, the police got a break. Early that morning, a man driving a truck turned onto a quiet Anchorage highway, and as he was making his way down the road, he saw up ahead on the side, there was this woman running towards him, screaming with her hands over her head, and she wasn't wearing pants or shoes. And so obviously he knew something was wrong, and so he pulled over, and as this woman is charging up towards him, he notices she has a handcuff on one of her wrists, and she appears to be a lot younger than he initially thought. She's probably in her late teens. And so she comes running up to his car, he unlocks the passenger side door, she flings herself inside without even asking for permission, she slams the door behind her, and then ducks down to keep her head out of the window, like she's trying to hide from something out there. Now this man looked out and he didn't see anyone or anything, but he wasn't going to wait around for whatever it was she was scared of, and so he just made a gut decision to take this girl away from here. And so he peeled off and drove down the road, and the girl, who was very shaken up, couldn't even tell this guy what was going on. She just asked him to please drop her off at a nearby motel, and the man didn't ask any questions. He drove her to the motel and he dropped her off. The girl ran inside and up to her room, and when she ran inside, the motel receptionist sees this girl running in. I mean, she doesn't have her pants on, she's got a handcuff on, she looks terrified, and so she called the police. A few minutes later, the police showed up. They went up to this girl's room, they knocked on the door. The The girl opened it up and she was obviously very scared, and she allowed the police inside, and she told them her name was Cindy Paulson and she was 17 years old. The police recognized this girl is terrified, she's not a threat, and so they removed the one handcuff that was still on her, and then they asked her, what happened? And the police officers would say her story was just horrible. But what stood out to them was not how disturbing the story was, it was how composed and brave this girl was as she told it. This is her story. The night before, Cindy was working the streets of Anchorage. She was a prostitute, and a car pulled up, and inside was this wiry, bearded guy with glasses who seemed kind of slight and harmless, and he asked to buy her services. And because she didn't view him as a threat, she agreed and hopped in his passenger seat, and as soon as she sat down, he reached over and put a handcuff on one wrist, and then drew a gun on her and told her to be quiet. And then he drove her to the...
This might be it. I don't know, though. Like I said, I haven't seen that movie either. I haven't seen Frozen Ground. So this is all new to me. I'm just here for the ride.
This fairly nice neighborhood, pulled into a driveway. He got her out of the car and led her into this house, and he brought her along downstairs into the basement, where as soon as she got down there, there was a dim light, and she saw there was a chain swinging from the ceiling. And he strung her up onto that chain, and for hours he assaulted her. And then after he grew tired of doing that, he told her he was going to go take a nap, and when he came back, they were going to leave this house and go out to his cabin in the woods. At this point, she begged him to let her go, but he really didn't care. He just told her that if she made any noise or tried to escape at any point, he would have to kill her. And then he walked out of the room. And for the next several hours, Cindy remained chained to the ceiling with half of her clothes off, wondering what horrible thing was going to happen to her next. Eventually, her attacker came back in the room, and he untied her from her chain, and he walked her upstairs to his living room, where he very proudly showed her a number of hunting trophies he had, and he began telling her about how much he loved hunting and where he went hunting. And it was at this point that Cindy realized this guy has no intention of keeping her alive. He's shown her his face, his house, his car. He's told her about places he likes to go and things he likes to do. He's given her all this information about himself. She is a huge liability to him. And so it dawned on her that if she didn't find a way to escape, she was going to die. After the trophy tour, the man led Cindy back out to her car, he put her inside, and then he drove to a nearby small airport where he said his plane was. And so he pulled over to their hangar.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like it is. Robert Hansen. What you were saying, Lauren's only working long.
He got her out of the car and he put her inside of the plane. And as Cindy is sitting in the plane, she's watching this guy load gun after gun and bag after bag of what looks like military supplies into this plane. And so she knows that this is the moment. I have to escape right now, because as soon as this plane takes off, I'm done for. And so at some point when this guy went over to his car to get something and his back was turned to her, she jumped out of the cockpit of this plane. She fell to the ground. She got up and just began running out of the hangar. And she managed to get out of the hangar and began turning the corner and running towards this forest right as she hears this guy charging after her, screaming that he's going to catch her and kill her. And so she just keeps running for her life all the way into this forest, all the way to that highway, before she finally stopped and turned around and she saw the man had stopped following her. This is when she went onto the highway and she flagged down the guy in the truck who brought her to the motel. The police were shocked by her story. It sounded totally unbelievable, but she was so genuinely scared and so detailed that they believed her. And so they told her they would have to bring her to the hospital, and on their way to the hospital, she demanded they go back to that airport that she had been held at so she can try to identify the hangar she had been in, and hopefully the plane would still be in there. And so the police comply, they go into the airport, and Cindy points out the hangar she believes she was in. And when they get there, the plane she had been on was still there, but the man, her attacker, was not there. And so the police got out and they began taking down notes about the plane, its different tag numbers and what it looked like. And while they're standing there, the security guard from the airport came over.
That's why I'm thinking that's who you're talking about. Lauren's only working long.
because he saw the police cars, and he told the officers that the night before he had seen the owner of the plane they're looking at acting very suspiciously with something inside of his car, and so on a hunch he had recorded that man's license plate number, and he gave that number to police. And so the police were able to use that license plate number and some of the numbers on the plane to figure out who owned both vehicles, and it was a local man named Robert Hansen who owned a very successful bakery downtown. After dropping Cindy off at the hospital, the police officers decided to pay a visit to Robert Hansen at his house. When they got there, Robert was actually pulling into his driveway right at the same time, and they saw his car matched the description that Cindy had given of his car. And then when Robert got out of his car, he matched the description that Cindy had given of her attacker. When Robert saw the police parked outside of his house, he immediately invited them over and said, what can I help you with? And the police said, we'd like to talk to you. Can we go inside? Robert invited them inside, and when the police went into his house, it matched the description that Cindy had given of his house with all the hunting trophies everywhere. And so they sat down and they asked him what he was doing the night before, and he said he had spent the night with some friends, and he had their contact information, and if you needed to talk to them, you could, but they would say he was with them. When the police asked if they could have a look around his property, Robert immediately consented and said, you can look anywhere you want. And so the police searched his property, but found no signs that Cindy had been attacked there. And so they thanked him for his hospitality and they left. Once they got back to their station, they checked in with Robert's two friends he claimed he was with the night before, and they each independently corroborated Robert's story, saying that yes, he was with them from this time to this time. And so it appeared, as unlikely as it seemed, that Robert was telling the truth. And so the police went back to Cindy and they said, are you sure that everything you told us is exactly as you remember it? You didn't exaggerate anything? This is the truth? And Cindy said, absolutely. And they said, okay, well, are you prepared to take a lie detector test to prove that you're telling the truth? And Cindy said, no. Now, it's unclear why she said no. Maybe it was a general distrust of the police, but either way, when she said no, it immediately cast an enormous amount of doubt on her story in the eyes of the police. And when Cindy started to pick up that the police really didn't believe her anymore, she got spooked and just left town. And after that, her case and Robert Hansen were largely forgotten about. But 3 months later, on September 2nd, all of that changed. On that day, a construction crew was doing some work on a backcountry road not far from where those 3 women's bodies had been found. And at some point, one of their machines uncovered some human remains. The police were called in, who pulled up the rest of the remains, and then just like in Sherry Morrow's case, when they looked for evidence around this new body, they found a single shell casing from a .223 caliber round. The remains were brought back for an autopsy, where it was determined that the body was female and she had died from several gunshot wounds. Using dental records, they were able to identify this woman as being 17-year-old Paula Goulding, who was an exotic dancer who had gone missing 5 months prior from Anchorage. The police sent the .223 shell casing found in Paula's gravesite, along with the other .223 shell casing found in Sherry Morrow's gravesite, to a lab to be analyzed. And it was quickly determined that both of these rounds had been fired from the same rifle, and therefore both women had most likely been killed by the same person. This was the moment the police knew they were dealing with a serial killer, and many police officers wanted it to be Robert Hansen. He seemed like the guy, but he had a rock-solid alibi and they had no hard evidence against him. And so without any other suspects, the police turned to a famous FBI profiler, a guy by the name of John Douglas, and they asked him to build a profile of who he think killed Sherry Morrow and Paula Goulding. And when John's report came back, the police were shocked. The profile described a man in his 40s who blended in easily with society. He was well-liked and got along with people and was just a normal guy. And he was successful, probably because he owned a successful business. He was an avid outdoorsman and hunter, and he most likely had a significant speech defect, like a lisp or a stutter. The profile was perfectly describing Robert Hansen. And because of John Douglas's prolific success in correctly identifying killers based on his profiles, when a judge saw this particular profile and saw how neatly it lined up with Robert Hansen, he gave the FBI a search warrant for Robert's house. And this time,
Jeez. That's a good fucking guy right there, that FBI guy.
they would find very damning.
Oh my God. Stop talking about that, buddy.
evidence, like a map of the local area. It was a hunting map, and on it there were 37 X's marked off. And some of those X's coincided with the same area where those 4 women's bodies had been found. They also found a .223 caliber rifle, along with a bag of women's jewelry that contained a necklace belonging to Sherry Morrow. As the FBI was carrying evidence out of Robert's house into their truck, a neighbor walked over after seeing all the commotion, and she walked up to one of the agents, and she was very skittish and anxious, and she said, you know, my husband, he's friends with Robert, and he recently pretended to be an alibi for Robert. He had no idea how much trouble he was in, and I certainly didn't know,
Oh my god, now I want to watch this movie.
but I want you guys to know that my husband was lying. He was not with Robert on the night that he said he was. This was the proverbial nail in the coffin for Robert Hansen, because now, without this alibi, he had nothing to hide behind. And so when the police approached Robert with their overwhelming evidence against him between what they found in his house and this now recanted statement from his former alibi, Robert said, okay, I'm going to confess. But there was a catch. He was only willing to confess to murdering the 4 women whose bodies had already been found by police. Now, the police knew Robert had almost definitely killed more people, and so at this point, they just wanted to know who the other victims were and where they were. And so they offered Robert a deal where he would confess to those 4 murders and then give additional information about
Look at that sick fuck.
other victims, where they were located, who they were, what happened to them. In exchange, they would not prosecute him on any other victims he named. And so Robert agreed to these terms, he signed the deal, and then he gave a full, horrifying confession. He said he would drive around Anchorage at night and look for young, vulnerable women that were all alone. These were usually prostitutes out on the street, or they were exotic dancers he would try to befriend inside of clubs. And when he approached these women, he would tell them he was a professional photographer and he thought they were beautiful and he wanted to take photos of them, and he would pay them for the photo shoot. And many of these women were aspiring models, and they were really excited at this idea, and so they would agree to go. And so Robert would tell them to meet him the next day at a particular location, which was usually a fast food restaurant. And Robert would show up much earlier, and he would hide in his car, and he would wait to see when they showed up if they were alone or not. And when he saw they were alone and they had no one to help them, he would drive up and he would ask them to get in his car. What these women couldn't see was on the inside of the passenger side door was a handcuff that was already latched on to the door itself, and there was an open cuff waiting for them as soon as they got in. They would get in the car, he would reach over them and act like he was helping them put on their seatbelt, and then as they're kind of looking at him, wondering what he's doing, he would grab their wrist, throw it in the open handcuff, and then he would draw a pistol and hold it against their head and say, "Be quiet." During his confession, Robert bragged to police that he had done this so many times, putting the handcuff on and drawing the pistol, that it was like muscle memory for him. Once he had the women handcuffed inside of his car, he would drive them back to his house and he would bring them into his basement and he would chain them up to the ceiling just like Cindy had described. And then after assaulting them for hours, he would take them out of his basement, put them in his car, drive out to the airport. He would put them in his plane, but unlike Cindy, these women didn't escape. And he would take off and he would fly them out to his cabin, which was not far from where those 4 bodies had been found. Once he got the women into his cabin, he would undress them and put a blindfold on them, and then with their handcuffs still on, he would assist them out the front door and tell them to run. And they would take off as fast as they could into the woods, running into trees, falling over, but just running for their lives, believing their ordeal was now over. They just had to get away from this guy. But what they didn't know is their ordeal was just starting. Robert had no intention of allowing them to escape. He knew there was deep water that surrounded his cabin, and so if they actually made it that far to the water's edge, they would drown. And so Robert would give these women a significant head start to give them the sense that they actually might escape. And then Robert would grab his knife and his hunting rifle, and he would head out and begin stalking his prey. And for the next several hours or days, he would walk around the woods looking for these women, and he would just stay off, watching what they were doing. And at some point, he would sneak up on them, and he would wound them intentionally, usually with his knife, and then he had a blood trail to follow. And he would follow these dying women who were screaming out for help, and at some point, these women would know they were going to die. There was no hope for them, and they would collapse or they would stop, and at that point, Robert would walk up to them, and he would shoot them. Afterwards, he would remove their handcuffs, he would redress them, and then he would bury them in a shallow grave. Before he was carted off to prison to serve a life sentence without the possibility of parole, he was brought out by authorities to help identify where other grave sites were in that hunting area. But he was only able to find 8 additional victims because he would go to different grave sites and the remains would not be there anymore, most likely because animals had ransacked the area, or he just simply forgot where it was, or he didn't want to share any more information with police. Robert never confirmed if all 37 of those X's on that map that was found are actual sites of victims that he buried. But investigators say that's exactly what they were, and in fact, many believe there are other maps with more X's on them. But the police could only confirm 17 victims. If there were more, we probably will never know, because in 2014, Robert died in prison and he took those secrets to the grave. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's
That's gonna be it for me too, y'all, because I have to get up and do adulting stuff tomorrow morning. So I have to work in the morning. So I'll be back. I'll let you guys know when I get back streaming. I might stream tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. So yeah. Thank you guys for doing this. I'm planning on doing a lot more stuff. Lauren's only working long. I'll hit you up at some point tomorrow. Whenever I can. It'll be probably late because I get off work late. So uh anyways, love you guys. Thank you guys for supporting this. I love it. Anyways, like I said, I plan on doing more. When I stream tomorrow, I'll do a Lauren stream tomorrow. I promise. I'll do a Lauren stream tomorrow for y'all. So yeah. Anyways, good night. Love you guys. See you guys. I'm out. Peace.